Naruto, advancing through pure effort in Konoha. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Kirigakure Anbu. The dagger and kunai collided, making a harsh friction sound, and sparks burst between the blades, which was enough to show the strength of both sides. During the stalemate, Qingming looked up. Under the black robe, there was a pale mask, and on the mask, there were 4 twisted lines shaped like water, which was the symbol of the hidden mist village. Combined with the other party's dress, it is not difficult to guess that he should be an Anbu ninja from the hidden mist village. And just as Qingming was looking at the other party, the hidden mist Anbu was also looking at him. Qingming seized the opportunity, and at the moment when the two sides looked at each other, he suddenly opened the Sharingan and activated the hypnotic ability of the Sharingan at the same time. That's right, Qingming had never opened the Sharingan before. This is not because he had hidden a trick for the hidden mist Anbu in front of Yin, but after his Sharingan evolved to 3 Magatama, he could no longer gain evolution by opening his eyes and wasting time. In order to avoid wasting chakra, he stopped keeping the Sharingan open for a long time ago. Of course, it is impossible to say that there is no calculation at all. Qingming had thought about how to maximize the effectiveness of the Sharingan a long time ago. The answer is to catch the opponent by surprise. Therefore, Qingming did not open the Sharingan. In addition to saving chakra, he thought that he could catch the opponent off guard. Facts have proved that his idea was not wrong. For example, now Qingming suddenly opened the Sharingan and used hypnosis. The Kirigakure Anbu had no time to react and was hit on the spot. Taking this opportunity, Qingming turned his wrist, and the dagger brushed the opponent's kunai and passed, with the tip of the sword pointing directly at the opponent's chest. In fact, Qingming could aim at the opponent's carotid artery, but in order to save the opponent's life, he did not choose to attack his vitals. Swish! The sound of a sharp blade cutting through flesh and blood sounded. Qingming's dagger cut through the chest of the Kirigakure Anbu, leaving a shallow scar. Yes, it was a shallow scar. Qingming saw clearly that just at the critical moment, the opponent broke free from the hypnotic effect of the Sharingan, and then instinctively took a half step back. It was this half step that made him, who should have been seriously injured, only suffer a minor injury. The Kirigakure Anbu ignored the injury on his chest, but just looked at Qingming vigilantly. After a while, he said, "Sharingan? A ninja from the Uchiha clan." His voice came through the mask, which seemed a little dull. Hearing this, Qingming did not say much, and directly lifted the transformation technique and turned back to his original appearance of 11 or 12 years old. Seeing Qingming's young age, the Kirigakure Anbu's eyes flashed with surprise, but he quickly covered it up. Then, he heard him say, "Why did you pretend to be an Iwagakure ninja and lure me here? What?" Of course, to make batteries. Hearing this in his heart, Qingming rushed forward, swinging the short sword in his hand one after another, hitting the vital points of the Kirigakure Anbu. Although the Kirigakure Anbu seemed to be talking just now, he actually did not relax at all. So, the moment Qingming made his move, he reacted and swung out the kunai in his hand to block Qingming's attack. For a while, the sound of ding-dong continued in the field. Qingming's level 5 swordsmanship was so powerful. Combined with the 3 Magatama Sharingan, it took only dozens of moves to overwhelm the Kirigakure Anbu. Swish! Another sword stabbed out, and the Kirigakure Anbu's dodge was a little slow, and Qingming left a deep scar on his shoulder. This is not over yet. Then, Qingming put away the sword and formed a seal at the moment when the two people's eyes met, and performed the Jinjutsu Sharingan in one go, at the fastest speed. Although the power of this Jinjutsu Sharingan was average due to the short preparation time, it also caused the Kirigakure Anbu to lose consciousness for a short time. Taking this opportunity, Qingming swung out a sword and cut off a large piece of flesh and blood on the opponent's left arm. If he hadn't woken up at the last moment and dodged, it would have been more than just a piece of meat. After all, Qingming's target just now was his entire arm. This can't go on any longer. The Kirigakure Anbu was anxious. He had already seen that Qingming's swordsmanship was very high, and it was difficult for him to keep up with the opponent's rhythm in close combat. Coupled with the existence of the Sharingan, he was even less of an opponent. If this kind of battle continued, there would be no other result except being worn out to death. He even had a vague feeling that Qingming seemed to be holding back on purpose, otherwise the opponent would not have missed a chance to attack his vital points when he was hit. However, the fact is that the opponent's attacks on several occasions could indeed seriously injure him, but they would not be fatal. What does the opponent want to do? Capture me alive? The Kurigakure Anbu was confused, and after thinking for a long time, there was no result. So, he stopped thinking about it and began to think about how to use this to get out of the current predicament. Perhaps, I can only take a gamble. After thinking for a long time, the Kurigakure Anbu made up his mind. 2 minutes later, when Qingming found another opportunity and stabbed out with a sword, the Kurigakure Anbu did not dodge to the sides as he expected, but took the sword head-on, and then took the opportunity to forcibly distance himself. Seeing this, Qingming's expression changed slightly, and he was about to catch up immediately. But at this moment, the Kurigakure Anbu, who had been prepared, took out 3 smoke bombs from the ninja tool bag and smashed them to the ground. The next moment, the smoke dispersed, obscuring Qingming's vision. After he approached carefully, the Kurigakure Anbu had completed the seal and performed the Kurigakure village's signature ninjutsu, water style, Kurigakure Jutsu. In just a blink of an eye, a thick layer of white fog gathered around, greatly restricting Qingming's Sharingan. This shows that the opponent is not lacking in experience in fighting Sharingan. This is also in line with some of the situations he has learned. For example, most of the middle and upper level ninjas of the Uchiha clan were assigned to the battlefield against amidst and sans ninjas. You know, both of them have ways to deal with the Sharingan. The former is the water style, mist hidden technique, and the latter is the mechanical puppet. Qingming would never believe that there is no trick in this. Obviously, the village is deliberately weakening the strength of the Uchiha clan. So do the Uchiha high-level officials know this? The answer is obvious. However, the Uchiha clan cannot refuse the justice at the moment, and most of the Uchiha ninjas are not afraid of fighting, so they obey the village's dispatch. But this undoubtedly exacerbated the conflict between the village and the Uchiha clan. As for being forced to move out of the core area of the village after the Nine Tails Rebellion, that was just the last straw that broke the camel's back. Shaking his head, Qingming stopped thinking about it and looked at the thick fog around him. Although he couldn't see it, he could feel that the Kurigakure Anbu was hiding nearby, like a seasoned hunter, waiting for the moment when he showed his weakness. However, Qingming didn't want to play the game of hide-and-seek with the other party. After all, this place was in the territory of the Land of Earth and not far from the battlefield. Over time, accidents were inevitable. So, it was better to solve it as soon as possible. With this thought, Qingming raised his hands, quickly completed the seal, opened his mouth, took a deep breath, and then spit it out mixed with wind escape chakra. This was not another ninjutsu, but the wind escape, great breakthrough that he had worked hard to level 3, 410/1000. As soon as this technique came out, the surrounding thick fog was immediately stirred up and scattered. When the hurricane stopped, there was no white fog in the field. Chapter 127 Outbreak. Whoosh, sound of breaking through the air was heard. Qingming had just blown away the white mist around him when a kunai shot from behind, aiming directly at his back. However, Qingming seemed to have eyes behind his head, and before the kunai shot, he dodged to the side. Seeing that the attack failed, the Kurigakure Anbu immediately changed his moves, his hands turned into after images, and he took out shurikens from all parts of his body, throwing them at Qingming like flowers scattered by a goddess. If you look closely, you can find that those shurikens are glowing with purple light, which is obviously poisoned, very much like the style of the Anbu ninja. However, Qingming was not afraid at all when he saw this. In his blood-red pupils, the Sharingan rotated rapidly, and he could see the incoming shurikens clearly in an instant, and predicted their flight trajectory. Then, there was a sound of ding ding ding, and all the incoming shurikens in front were cut down by Qingming's sword. Not only that, he also took the opportunity to rush towards the Kurigakure Anbu. The Kurigakure Anbu dared not let him get close, and immediately kicked the ground with both feet, and the man bounced out in an instant, pulling away from Qingming again. During this time, he quickly completed the seal with both hands, opened his mouth, and sprayed out a stream of water. The water flow expanded rapidly, like a trumpet, and enveloped Qingming. Seeing this, Qingming paused slightly, put away the dagger, and completed the seal in an instant, and performed the Uchiha clan's signature ninjutsu, fire style, great fireball technique. The next moment, a flame sprayed out of his mouth and turned into a fireball. The fireball continued to move forward and its volume continued to expand. When it collided with the water-style ninjutsu released by the Kurigakure Anbu, it had become a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 3 meters. Zzzz, the flame and the water collided, making a harsh sound, and a large amount of water vapor was born, which soon spread to the surroundings. Seeing this, the Kurigakure Anbu's eyes lit up, and he was about to perform the Kurigakure technique again. However, before he could make any move, a whirlwind suddenly rose out of nowhere, sweeping away the surrounding water vapor. Qingming put down his left hand from his mouth, looked at the slightly confused Kurigakure Anbu, and the hypnotic ability of the Sharingan was instantly activated. The next moment, Kurigakure Anbu felt his head sink, and the drowsy feeling came again. He immediately looked away and stepped back. However, before he could take 2 steps back, several shurikens flew over, blocking his retreat. If it were an ordinary person, it would be impossible to do this. But Qingming was different. He not only had the 3 Magatama Sharingan, but also mastered the ninja tool throwing to the perfect level of LV500. In this way, the two combined, a few small shurikens were enough to cut off the opponent's retreat. Taking this opportunity, Qingming performed the instant body technique, flashed in front of the Kurigakure Anbu, and then with a cold light, swung the short sword in his hand. The Kurigakure Anbu had no way to dodge and could only raise the kunai to block. Ding, a crisp metal collision sound was heard, and the short sword was blocked. Qingming did not entangle, immediately put away the sword, turned around, and stabbed again. Ding, the Kurigakure Anbu blocked it again. Qingming still did not entangle, and after quickly putting away the sword, his figure flashed, changed his angle, and launched the third attack. The Kurigakure Anbu continued to block. Just like this, Qingming's Sharingan was fully activated, and the whole person was like a ghost, surrounding the Kurigakure Anbu and constantly attacking. If there was another Uchiha ninja who opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan standing here, he would find that almost every sword of Qingming was stuck in the blind spot of the Kurigakure Anbu's vision. This is something that can only be done by practicing the Uchiha-style sword art and Jinjutsu Sharingan to the realm of level 5 or above. In the entire Uchiha clan, I am afraid that only Qingming can do it. And the effect produced by such a high difficulty of practice is naturally beyond doubt. Only the Kurigakure Anbu had rich combat experience and quick reaction. If it were an ordinary mid-level ninja, he would have died countless times. But then again, how long can Kurigakure Anbu hold on? Originally, he had already suffered serious injuries in the previous battle. Now he has to bear such great pressure. It is only a matter of time before he reveals his flaws. Qingming knew this, and Kurigakure Anbu knew it too, so he tried his best to find opportunities to counterattack. However, it was precisely because of the proactive attack that Qingming seized an opportunity first. Qingming completed the seal at the fastest speed in his life, and cast the Jinjutsu Sharingan. The moment he controlled the opponent, he pierced his right arm with a sword. After suffering such a heavy blow, Kurigakure Anbu woke up immediately. He endured the severe pain, quickly felt his own state, and then glanced at Qingming again. After confirming that he had no chance of winning and could not leave, his eyes condensed, as if he had made some kind of determination. Then, he completely ignored Qingming's upcoming attack, just closed his eyes and kept retreating. At the same time, he struggled to raise his hands, as if to make a seal. This is not good. Qingming seemed to have thought of something, and the chakra in his body burst out instantly, and the powerful might made the Kurigakure Anbu stagnate. But the other party still did not open his eyes, obviously guarding against Qingming's Sharingan illusion. However, this is no longer important. Qingming, who burst out all his chakra, suddenly increased his speed, and in almost an instant, he came in front of the other party. Swish swish, 2 sword beams flashed, and Qingming waved the short sword in his hand and instantly cut off the 2 forearms that the Kurigakure Anbu had just raised. This is not over yet. Qingming flashed again and came behind the other party. Then, his hands flew, and he completed the seal in an instant, and performed the chakra absorption technique, grabbing the back of the other party's neck. The next moment, a steady stream of chakra poured into his body, and Qingming felt extremely comfortable. However, he still did not relax, and he did not breathe a sigh of relief until he drained the chakra of the Kurigakure Anbu in front of him. It's not his fault that he was so careful, but the other party's move just now was too dangerous. If he guessed correctly, the other party just wanted to drag him to death, or use some kind of suicide method. If it was the latter, it would be fine. At most he would be empty-handed. But if it was the former, then it would be a big trouble. Who knows how far the other party's means will spread? If he can't avoid it, then the joke will be big. That's why he didn't run away, but chose to take the initiative. However, this also made his exposure inevitable. After all, this place is too close to the battlefield. Any perceptive ninja can detect the chakra that just erupted from him. In this way, both the Cloud Ninja and the Rock Ninja will send people to investigate. After all, no one will feel at ease knowing that a powerful enemy is hiding in the dark. It's time to go. With this thought, Qingming no longer stayed. After cleaning up the battlefield casually, he grabbed the unconscious mist-hidden Anbu beside him and left. Not long after he left, several waves of people came here, including not only the Kumagakure and Iwagakure ninjas, but also the spies of other forces. Unfortunately, the battle between Qingming and the Kurigakure Anbu didn't last that long, and it only took less than 10 minutes in total. During the battle, Qingming used the swordsmanship the most, followed by the Sharingan, and neither of these two would leave obvious traces. Therefore, those people searched and found no valuable clues. In this case, let alone tracking. Chapter 128, Change of Thinking. Inside the Rock Bear Cave, Qingming put down the unconscious Kurigakure Anbu, thought for a moment, raised his hand and performed the shadow clone technique, creating two shadow clones. Because they inherited the memory of the original body, the two shadow clones left the cave and ran outside without Qingming's order. Next, they will patrol a nearby area to be alert for possible dangers. Although he is sure that there is a high probability that no one will chase him, even if there is a 1 in 10,000 chance, he must be careful. After all, this is not Konoha's territory. If he is discovered, he will be greeted by enemies several times or even dozens of times his own. Qingming does not want to be chased like a dog and run around. Therefore, when it is time to be cautious, you still have to be more cautious. After the preventive work was done, Qingming turned his attention back to the Kurigakure Anbu. Looking at the other party's body full of sword marks, Qingming did not think much and immediately performed the healing technique to heal the other party. This is his property and must be well maintained. Half an hour later, Qingming took his hand away from the other party's last wound, and then said, "Don't pretend to sleep if you wake up." Hearing this, the Kurigakure Anbu slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were bright and clear, without the slightest sense of confusion after just waking up. Obviously, the other party had woken up a long time ago and was just pretending to sleep. "What do you want to do?" The Kurigakure Anbu stared at Qingming with his eyes and asked coldly. Hearing this, Qingming replied casually, "Nothing, I just want you to help me." However, after hearing his words, the Kurigakure Anbu's expression froze, and I don't know what he thought of, and his upper body suddenly jumped up. Then, he opened his mouth wide and bit Qingming's throat directly. Humph! Seeing this, Qingming was stunned at first, then snorted coldly, and his Sharingan opened instantly, hypnotizing the other party in just a moment. Bang! The Kurigakure Anbu, who had just raised his body, fell down again. In the previous battle, he was already exhausted, so Qingming knocked him down with just a simple hypnosis. Looking at the Kurigakure Anbu who fell into coma again, Qingming knew that it would not work to make him obey his orders and actively refine chakra like the previous Sans ninjas. It was because the other party was not afraid of death. In this way, let alone refining chakra, it would be good if he could not cause trouble for him. Fortunately, his chakra absorption technique had already been upgraded to level 5, which could directly extract the target's mental and physical energy. In this way, the other party did not need to cooperate. Next, he only needed to keep the other party asleep, and then directly extract the mental and physical energy. Although this method of exhausting the pond to catch fish would fundamentally damage the body of the Kurigakure Anbu, it would not be conducive to continuous harvesting in the long run. But the problem is that he can't stay here for too long. So, there is no need to think about things too far in the future. Now, what he needs to do is to squeeze the potential of the other party as much as possible, and obtain the greatest benefits in the shortest time, that is, to harvest the most chakra. As for sustainable development, don't worry about it. After thinking about this, Qingming stopped struggling. Then, there was only one question left, that is, whether he should still target the hidden players of various forces. At the beginning, the biggest reason why he targeted these people was concealment. These people had special identities, and even if they lost contact, they would not attract the attention of others in a short time. But he forgot that these people were also very strong. If every target was as difficult to deal with as the Kurigakure Anbu, then not to mention concealment, even their own lives would be threatened. Not to mention that before these people were arrested, in order to keep the secret, they would basically try to commit suicide, and as long as he didn't stop them, it would be a waste of time. In this way, the risks and benefits were obviously not equal, and Qingming couldn't help but think about whether there was a problem with the capture target he set. Perhaps he should target the Cloud Ninjas and Rock Ninjas who were performing guard and patrol tasks outside the battlefield. Compared with the Anbu ninjas in each village, these people are obviously easier to deal with. The only hidden danger is whether the capture of these people will attract the attention of the high-level Cloud Ninjas and Rock Ninjas on the battlefield, and then send people to search. As the saying goes, people leave traces when they pass by, and wild geese leave their voices when they pass by. No matter how careful he is, as long as he does it, he will definitely leave traces. It's okay once or twice, but if it happens too many times, it's inevitable that people will find out. By then, it will be difficult to deal with. No, I still have to try. After thinking for a long time, Qingming made a decision and finally planned to change the target. There is no way. Compared with being noticed by the top leaders of the Cloud Ninja and the Rock Ninja, the risk of capturing spies from other forces is undoubtedly higher. What's more, as long as he is careful, it shouldn't cause too much noise for a while. And by the time they find the problem, the final decisive battle may be coming, and then they won't be able to take care of him. With this thought, Qingming no longer hesitated and immediately wanted to perform the shadow clone technique to create a shadow clone to help him find a suitable target. But just as he was about to make a seal, he suddenly realized that the 3 shadow clones that the LV1 shadow clone technique could maintain were all outside. Now, he simply couldn't create more shadow clones. As a last resort, Qingming could only call back a shadow clone that was on guard nearby and let it perform the search mission. After it left, Qingming opened the panel and took a look. He saw that in the past 20 days, his shadow clone technique had been upgraded from LV1, 40 out of 200, to LV1, 91/200, and there were only a little more than 100 points of proficiency left before upgrading to LV2. After thinking about it, Qingming asked the shadow clone that was observing the battlefield to cancel the ninjutsu and make room for him to improve the proficiency of the shadow clone technique. That's right, Qingming decided to upgrade the shadow clone technique to LV2 to increase the number of shadow clones. However, there must be strategy and hard work. Not long ago, he had just extracted the chakra of the Kurigakure Anbu, and now the chakra in his body is overflowing. If he practices the shadow clone technique at this time, the loss of chakra will be great. So, Qingming first practiced the reflection heart technique, and when the chakra dropped to more than 3,000 points, he began to practice the shadow clone technique. In this way, every time he practiced, the chakra consumed was about 200 points, which was still within Qingming's acceptable range. Soon, Qingming completed the practice of the shadow clone technique 5 times. At this time, his chakra had dropped to 2,000 points. If it continued to drop, the shadow clone technique would not be able to be performed. So, Qingming came to the side of the Kurigakure Anbu and performed the chakra absorption technique, forcibly extracting the opponent's spiritual energy and physical energy. Then, it was converted into chakra and replenished into his body. Qingming did not extract too much. When the chakra recovered to more than 3,000 points, he would stop and practice the shadow clone technique again, repeating the cycle. In this way, it took a whole day of hard work, and Qingming also spent a lot of his own chakra, and then he practiced the shadow clone technique to level 2, 1/500. In fact, if he simply worked hard to improve his proficiency in the shadow clone technique, it wouldn't take that long, but it also takes time to refine chakra. That's why it took so long. However, it was all worth it. After the shadow clone technique was upgraded to level 2, not only did the number of shadow clones increase to 5, but the stability was also improved a lot. In addition, the chakra loss also increased from 10% of all shadow clones to 90%. It doesn't seem much for each one, but it adds up to a lot. Especially when the number of his shadow clones continued to rise, this saving effect became more obvious. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Easy. It was night. In a dense forest on a mountain about 7 or 8 kilometers away from the main battlefield, two teams from the Cloud Village and the Rock Village were fighting. If the day was a contest between the two large forces, then the night was the battlefield for these patrol teams. In order to ensure the safety of their own wings, both the Cloud Village and the Rock Village sent out a lot of scouts, either to protect their own safety or to spy on the enemy's intelligence. In short, these people are very active at night. And correspondingly, when they meet, they often end up fighting to the death. Just like now, the two Cloud Ninja and Rock Ninja teams just met and a big battle broke out immediately. In just over 10 minutes, most of them were killed or injured. Now, there are 3 Cloud Ninjas still alive in the field, and only 2 Rock Ninjas are left, and their conditions are not very good. Realizing that the time is almost up, Qingming immediately chose to take action. Yes, Qingming was also at the scene, but he was just in the dark. Long before the battle broke out, he had targeted this team of Rock Ninjas and secretly guided them to run into the Cloud Ninjas in front of him. It can be said that the current situation was caused by him. Now, it's time to reap the harvest. Raising his hand to form the Wei seal, Qingming performed the instant body technique, and the whole person turned into a residual shadow, and instantly appeared behind the Cloud Ninja. A strong wind came, and the Cloud Ninja noticed something was wrong and wanted to dodge, but Qingming was too fast and slapped him on the back of the neck. The next moment, the Cloud Ninja's eyes rolled up and he fainted. Who is it? When their companion was attacked, the other 2 Cloud Ninjas immediately distanced themselves and shouted at the same time. Qingming looked in the direction where the voice came from. The moment he looked into the eyes of a Cloud Ninja, he suddenly opened his Sharingan and used his hypnotic ability with all his strength. Then, the Cloud Ninja fell to the ground cleanly. What? Sharingan, X2 3 voices rang out in succession. The former was made by the only remaining Cloud Ninja. Because of the angle problem, the other party did not see Qingming's eyes. He only saw Qingming looking at his companion. Then, his companion fell to the ground inexplicably. This made him very panicked and he couldn't help but make a sound. The latter was made by 2 Rock Ninjas, who saw the abnormality of Qingming's eyes very clearly. Thanks to Uchiha Qingming's amazing performance on the battlefield in front, many Rock Ninjas knew the power of the Sharingan. Therefore, they recognized Qingming's eyes at the first time. So, they closed their eyes at the same time, trying to avoid the influence of the Sharingan. However, they did so to avoid the Sharingan illusion, but they could not deal with the kunai thrown by Qingming. That's right, seeing the other party close his eyes, Qingming threw 4 kunai at the first time, piercing the forearms of the 2 people with incomparable accuracy. X2 The 2 people screamed at the same time and opened their eyes instinctively. The next moment, what came into their eyes was a pair of Scarlet 3 Magatama Sharingan. Then, the screams of the 2 stopped abruptly, and they fell into a state of unconsciousness at the same time. Until this moment, the surviving Kumo ninja realized what the 2 Iwen ninjas just said about the Sharingan. It turned out that the person who suddenly appeared was actually a ninja from the Uchiha clan. Realizing this, he immediately turned around and was about to rush in the direction of the main force. However, as soon as he turned around, he saw a pair of 3 Magatama Sharingan. Bang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. The Kumo ninja did not resist at all. After being hypnotized, he fell straight to the ground. This time, it was not Qingming who attacked. Although he was fast, he could not be so fast. It was his shadow clone who attacked. In order to prevent anyone from escaping, Qingming had already separated 2 shadow clones and hid them around to check for loopholes. It can be said that as long as there are no Jonin among these people, it is impossible to escape from this forest. Qingming came to the 2 Iwen ninjas who were under the illusion and knocked them out with 2 hand knives. So far, 3 Kumo ninjas and 2 Iwen ninjas were all taken down. Qingming looked at the 5 figures on the ground and felt that his decision to change the hunting target was absolutely correct. It was not as easy to deal with those Anbu ninjas as it was to deal with these ordinary Chunins. Just as Qingming was secretly calculating how much chakra these people could provide him, a memory suddenly emerged in his mind. It was the memory of the shadow clone that was responsible for vigilance in the distance. In the memory, a team of rock ninjas were approaching here rapidly. Obviously, the shadow clone was warning him. Without any hesitation, Qingming immediately performed the shadow clone technique and split out 2 more shadow clones. At this time, there were 3 shadow clones in the field. Qingming directly asked them to take the 5 people on the ground back to the hiding place, while he stayed to clean up the battlefield, erase the traces of his existence, and deal with the possible tales. A few minutes later, the team of rock ninjas arrived at the scene. They roughly checked the traces in the field and found no trace of Qingming. As for the 2 missing rock ninjas, they believed that the cloud ninjas had captured them. Although this situation is rare, the cloud ninjas are invaders and rarely take prisoners during battles, but it is not uncommon. Since there is a precedent to follow, they naturally came to this conclusion. With the answer, they did not stay too long, and left after checking the scene. Not long after they left, the support of the cloud ninjas also arrived. Similar to the logic of the rock ninjas just now, after checking the battlefield, they also believe that the 3 missing people on their side were captured by the other side. Therefore, they did not investigate too much. This allowed Qingming to successfully fish in troubled waters and capture 5 prisoners. However, it is foreseeable that as he captures more and more prisoners, the suspicion will become more and more serious. In this way, sooner or later, he will be exposed and hunted by both sides. But Qingming is not very worried, because it will not be long before the Rock Ninja army will form an encirclement. By then, whether it is the Rock Ninja or the Cloud Ninja, they will not pay attention to the disappearance of a few middle and lower level ninjas. And at that time, he may be able to go a step further and capture more prisoners, thereby further accelerating the evolution of the Sharingan. That's right. Qingming didn't plan to practice other skills next. He planned to put all his chakra into practicing the reflection heart technique. If possible, he even planned to upgrade it from level 6 to level 7 in the next few days. This is not impossible. After 20 days of practice, his reflection heart technique has already been upgraded from level 6, 3175, 10,000, to level 6, 6975/10000. Now, he only needs 3025 points of proficiency to be promoted to level 7. To upgrade to 3025 points of proficiency, Qingming roughly calculated that the required chakra is about 484,000 points. This number seems a lot, but it's just that. Chapter 130 Epilogue. Inside the Rock Bear Cave. Qingming removed his hand from the last rock ninja, felt the newly added chakra in his body, and nodded secretly. After some tests, he has estimated the amount of chakra that the 6 captives can provide him every day. Among them, the Kurigakira Anbu can supply 12,000 chakra points every day under full pressure, the 3 cloud ninjas can supply an average of 7,000 points, and the 2 rock ninjas can only supply 6,000 points. In this way, plus the 17,000 chakra points he can recover every day, that is 62,000 points. In other words, even if he does nothing in the next few days, it will only take less than 8 days to upgrade the reflection of the heart technique to level 7. And if he captures a few more captives in the next few days, this time can be shortened sharply. It is precisely because of this that he has the confidence to upgrade the reflection of the heart technique from level 6 to level 7 in a short period of time. And once his reflection of the heart technique is upgraded to level 7, the catalytic effect on the Sharingan will definitely be further improved. By then, perhaps only one use will increase the degree of evolution of the Sharingan. This will undoubtedly further speed up the evolution of his Sharingan. Of course, these are all later stories. For the time being, the process of upgrading the reflection of the heart technique from level 6 to level 7 can make his Sharingan gain a lot of evolution. The higher the evolution of the Sharingan, the stronger the pupil power. At that time, both the ability of the Sharingan itself and the various illusions performed with it will be further enhanced. Therefore, even if he stops practicing other skills, his strength is steadily improving. He took a long breath and threw away all the distracting thoughts in his mind. Qingming asked 2 shadow clones to be on guard nearby. One shadow clone focused on the main battlefield of the Cloud Ninja and the Rock Ninja, and the other shadow clone looked for new prey, while he entered the state of training. The reflection of the heart technique was performed by him over and over again, and each time he would have new insights, and at the same time, his Sharingan would move a little further towards the main Gekyo. In this way, 3 days passed in a flash. During these 3 days, Qingming went out twice again, bringing back a total of 3 Cloud Ninjas and 5 Rock Ninjas. However, among these 5 Rock Ninjas, 2 were only Jinan. Even if he squeezed them hard, he could only get 2,500 and 3,000 chakras from them respectively. As for the other 6 people, they were all Chunin like the previous captives, and they could provide him with 6,000 chakras on average. In this way, the chakra he could use every day increased from the original 62,000 points to the current 103,500 points. Unfortunately, these people were not captured by him at the beginning, which delayed a lot of time. As a result, after 3 days, his reflection of the heart technique only gained 1,550 points of proficiency, from LV6, 6,975 10,000, to LV6, 8,525/10000. However, after today, he can gain 647 points of proficiency every day. In other words, it only takes more than 2 days for his reflection of the heart technique to be promoted. Well, it's okay if it's shortened by 2 days, Qingming muttered, and was about to continue practicing. But at this moment, a stream of chakra followed the mysterious connection and appeared in his body with a memory. After a quick check, Qingming knew that this memory came from the shadow clone who was searching for prey. Originally, he thought that the other party had found a new prey, but when he finished reading the other party's memory, he found that the situation seemed to be different from what he imagined. This shadow clone did not find a new target, but instead got a piece of information, that is, the army of the Rock Ninja seemed to have formed a siege and was rapidly approaching the last line of defense of the Rock Ninja. Yes, it was the last line of defense. In the past 3 days, the elite Kumo Ninja, led by the third Raikage, broke through the 2 lines of defense of the Rock Village one after another. Directly pushed the battlefield from 200 kilometers away from the Rock Village to less than 50 kilometers away from the Rock Village. It has to be said that Inoki was also very bold. In order to hook the third Raikage and the elite troops of the Hidden Cloud Village, he even used the village as bait. You know, if the last line of defense cannot be held and the elite troops of the Hidden Cloud Village break into the village, then even if the outer Iwagakure army forms a siege, they can only admit defeat. After all, who doesn't have a few relatives? If the Hidden Cloud Village does not surrender, then the third Raikage and others can just use these villagers as hostages to delay the attack of the Iwagakure army. Then, more people will be dispatched to attack the Land of Earth from the outer periphery. Under the attack from both inside and outside, the Hidden Cloud Village may be destroyed, and the third Raikage will also achieve an unprecedented achievement. This shows how much money Inoki has invested. However, it is precisely because this bait is tempting enough that it can attract the third Raikage. Of course, the third Raikage is not stupid. He knows that there must be reinforcements from the Iwagakure who are rushing back. However, according to his calculations, even if the other party sets out as soon as they get the news, it will be difficult for them to arrive here within 5 days. Therefore, as long as the Iwagakure village is captured within this time, there will be no problem. To put it another way, even if the Iwagakure village is not captured on time, it does not matter. Because after the reinforcements of the Iwagakure village arrive, it is impossible to form an effective encirclement immediately, and they still have enough time to retreat. It is for this reason that the third Raikage dared to lead his subordinates to continue the attack. In theory, the third Raikage's choice is not wrong. But the premise of all this is that the Iwagakure village did not know about their surprise attack this time, and did not prepare in advance. Otherwise, it would be like now, the army of the Iwagakure village has formed an encirclement outside, but the third Raikage is still unknown. It can be said that the fate of the third Raikage has been doomed since the moment the intelligence was leaked. Next, the initiative on the battlefield will return to the hands of the Iwagakure village. It depends on whether they choose to keep the third Raikage or choose to keep this elite cloud ninja. According to the memory of the previous life, Qingming knew that the Iwagakure village finally chose the former. This life is probably about the same. However, these have nothing to do with him. What he is considering now is whether he can take advantage of this opportunity to make a fortune. Although he could develop steadily, he could upgrade the reflection heart technique to level 7 before the mission was over and complete the set goal. However, it would be better if he could go one step further. After all, when the mission was over, he would return to the frontline battlefield. At that time, there would be many people and eyes, and it would not be easy for him to make some small moves. Now, as long as he took some risks, he could take advantage of the opportunity when both sides were too busy to take care of him and obtain a large amount of chakra, thereby speeding up the evolution of the Sharingan. After thinking for a long time, Qingming slapped his thigh, stood up suddenly, and said to himself, "The brave will die of overeating, and the timid will die of starvation. Let's do it." After that, He crossed his hands and performed the shadow clone technique, splitting out 2 shadow clones again, asking them to search for suitable targets nearby together with the 2 shadow clones responsible for vigilance outside. Chapter 131 Tracking. One day later. In the evening. Somewhere in the forest, 2 teams from the Hidden Rock Village and the Hidden Cloud Village were fighting. Soon, there were only 5 people left in the field, including 3 Iwagakure ninjas and 2 Kumagakure ninjas. The Iwagakure ninjas were in a slightly worse condition, while the Kumagakure ninjas were in a slightly better condition. While they were confronting each other, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the field. These people were wearing black robes and masks, and it was impossible to tell which side the ninjas were from. Suddenly, the Iwagakure ninjas and Kumagakure ninjas became alert. But it was useless to be alert. The moment these 3 people appeared, they attacked the 5 people in the field without saying a word. These 3 people cooperated tacitly, their swordsmanship was sharp, and they relied on their flexible postures. They never fought head-on. It only took a while for them to knock down 2 people. Seeing this, the 3 people who were still standing couldn't help but retreat in their hearts. However, before they could put their plan into practice, they saw the black-robed man who was fighting with them suddenly distance himself, forming seals with his hands, as if he was going to perform some ninjutsu. The 3 of them did not dare to be careless and immediately used ninjutsu to counterattack. They were suppressed and beaten just now, and had no chance to use ninjutsu. Now that the other party took the initiative to distance themselves, it was a good opportunity for them to disrupt the situation. However, just as they raised their arms, they saw that the eyes under the masks of the 3 black-robed men suddenly changed from black to blood red. And on the blood-red pupils, there were 3 black as ink magatama. Sharingan. The 3 of them were shocked and wanted to look away immediately, but it was too late. The next moment, the 3 of them felt a sharp pain, and their bodies seemed to be pierced by several huge iron nails, unable to move. Obviously, they were hit by the unique illusion of the Uchiha clan, the magical shackle technique. "Are you ninjas from the Uchiha clan? Why did you attack us?" a cloud ninja asked while enduring the severe pain. However, the 3 black-robed men completely ignored his meaning. After controlling the situation, they flashed and appeared behind the 3 people, and then bang several times, knocking them out. Not only them, but also the 2 rock ninjas who were knocked down before were quickly knocked out. After doing this, the 3 black-robed people returned to their original appearance, and they were Qingming's shadow clones. No, not just 3 people, there was another shadow clone of Qingming standing quietly on the tree branch. The opponent had been hiding there from the beginning to the end, using the Sharingan to observe the every move of the Kumo and rock ninjas on the battlefield, guarding against any possible accidents. Whoosh! The shadow clone standing on the tree branch appeared directly in the field with a flash body technique. He looked at the other 3 shadow clones of Qingming and said, "Clean up the battlefield as soon as possible. Someone should have rushed here. We must hurry up." Yes, the 3 shadow clones didn't say anything nonsense, just nodded, and then cleaned up the battlefield quickly. Their movements were very skillful. And it was obvious that they had done this kind of thing many times. In fact, it was true. Originally, Qingming's task for them was to search for suitable targets, and then he would personally capture them. But after several captures, the number of prisoners in his hands increased, and the available chakra increased sharply every day, and the time required for training was correspondingly extended. Gradually, he could not spare any time. So, Qingming let these shadow clones do it themselves. These shadow clones inherited his memory, and their combat experience and skills were not bad at all. In addition, he was originally an agile root and rarely fought head-on, so there was no need to worry about the shadow clone's ability to withstand injuries. In this way, with the cooperation of the 4 shadow clones, the mission went very smoothly. A few minutes later, the battlefield was cleaned up. The 4 shadow clones erased their own traces, grabbed the 3 unconscious rock ninjas and 2 cloud ninjas on the ground, and quickly left the place. What they didn't know was that not long after they left, a rock-hidden ninja came here. He looked at the familiar clean battlefield and frowned slightly. Qingming's reckless arrest eventually aroused the suspicion of the Iwagakure village. This special Junin was specially sent to investigate the matter. He inspected the scene and found nothing suspicious. So, he bit his thumb, then quickly formed the 5 seals of Haisuyu Shenwei, slapped the ground, used blood as a guide, and performed the ninjutsu, the summoning technique. The next moment, Dozens of palm-sized mice appeared in the field. They were pitch black, with smooth fur and shiny eyes, and looked extremely spirited. The Iwagakure squatted down, grabbed one of them, put it in his palm, and said, "Zyoki, smell the smell of a few people around." The mouse called Zyoki shrugged its nose hard, and then squeaked a few times. The rock village Jonin seemed to understand, and glanced at the corpses around him. After counting them, he said, "Can you smell which direction they went?" Squeak Zyoki called a few times, stretched out his front paws, and pointed to a direction, which was the direction where the 4 shadow clones of Qingming left. Seeing this, the rock village Jonin said happily, "Zyoki, good job. Here, give it to you." As he said that, he took out a few peanuts from his pocket and handed them to the mouse in his palm. The mouse was very happy and ate the peanuts in a few bites. At this time, the rock village Jonin said, "Zyoki, you lead the way in front, follow those smells, and see if you can find people." Squeak Zyoki called a few times, and then ran forward with a group of younger brothers. The rock village Jonin followed them carefully, at the same time. In a hidden cave, Qingming drained the chakra of the last cloud ninja, and seeing that his own chakra was still not at full capacity, he drew a part of his spiritual and physical energy from him, transformed it into chakra, and replenished it in his body. Only then did Qingming nod with satisfaction, and then began to perform the reflection of the heart technique to promote the evolution of the Sharingan. An hour later, Qingming stopped performing the technique. At this time, the chakra in his body had dropped to half of its peak state, and the proficiency of the reflection of the heart technique had reached level 6, 9895/10000. Obviously, after more than a day of hard work, his reflection of the heart technique was one step closer to level 7. Qingming didn't want to waste time. He checked the status of several cloud ninjas and rock ninjas in the cave. After confirming that they would not wake up in a short time, he got up and left the cave. Then, he identified the direction and ran towards another hidden cave. When he was practicing just now, the shadow clone had sent back memories there. They prepared 3 rock ninjas and 2 cloud ninjas for him. The main reason why they were not allowed to send the prisoners over was for safety. Qingming knew how crazy what he was doing was. If he was spotted by the top leaders of Iwagakure and Kumagakure, they could separate the prisoners and not let the whole army be wiped out. Chapter 132 Promotion. 10 minutes later, Qingming arrived at the destination, walked into the cave, and saw 3 figures in front of him. They were his 3 shadow clones. As for the 4th one, in order to pass on information to him, the other party had already lifted the ninjutsu in advance. Qingming nodded at the 3 people and asked, "How is your chakra now?" 2001, 2000, 2003, the 3 shadow clones replied one after another. A little less, Qingming heard it, murmured, frowned and said, "Then you should lift the ninjutsu first." "Yes," the 3 shadow clones responded, without saying much, and directly lifted the shadow clone technique. Then, more than 90% of the chakra in the 3 shadow clones, along with a mysterious connection, flowed into Qingming's body, making his chakra directly overflow. At the same time, the memories of the 3 people also appeared in Qingming's mind. Qingming quickly browsed through the memories of the 3 people, and after confirming that there was nothing missing, he reformed the seal and performed the shadow clone technique. Bang, 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 accompanied by a burst of chakra smoke. 4 figures exactly like Qingming appeared in the field. They were the 4 shadow clones he had recently split out. Thanks to the overflowing chakra in his body, these 4 shadow clones each gained more than 4,000 chakra points. After refreshing the status of the shadow clones, Qingming let them leave. Next, they will continue to carry out the capture mission, while he himself will start practicing. However, before practicing, he must first replenish the chakra in his body. With this thought in mind, Qingming went straight to several unconscious cloud ninja and rock ninja, formed seals with his hands, and performed the chakra absorption technique. In just less than half a minute, he absorbed the chakra of 5 people and increased his own chakra from more than 4,000 points to more than 20,000 points. Qingming nodded with satisfaction, then found a place at random, sat cross-legged, and began to practice the reflection heart technique. Once, twice, 3 times. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Soon, an hour passed. Qingming also performed the reflection heart technique 60 times in a row, raising its proficiency from LV6, 9,895 10,000, to 12v6, 9955, 10,000. Looking at the reflection heart technique getting closer and closer to LV7, Qingming's heart was burning. However, he still suppressed the idea of continuing to practice. At this time, the remaining chakra in his body was only half of that in his heyday. Now the situation is unclear, and he doesn't want to consume all the chakra. Thinking of this, Qingming stood up and came to the 5 cloud ninjas and rock ninjas again. Just like before, he performed the chakra absorption technique. However, this time he did not absorb chakra. These 5 people no longer had chakra in their bodies. This time he absorbed the other party's spiritual energy and physical energy. After replenishing the chakra again, Qingming entered the state of practice again. Soon, more than half an hour passed. When Qingming performed the art of reflecting the heart for the 45th time, a sudden enlightenment came to his mind. Instantly, he knew that his art of reflecting the heart had been upgraded. Panel. With a thought, Qingming opened the proficiency panel. The next moment, the familiar light blue light screen appeared. Name: Uchiha Qingming. Age: 11 years old. Constitution: 11 spirit. 1415 chakra. 13,520. 1,982,820,980. Bloodline: Sharingan. 3 Magatama. 1702. 10,000. 5,115. 10,000. Skills: Chakra refining technique. LV4. 1449. 2000. LV4. 1674. 2000. Fire style: Great Fireball technique. LV4. 7/2000. Fire style: Dragon Fire technique. LV4. 6/2000. Wind style: Great Breakthrough. LV3. 415/1000. Shadow Clone technique. LV2. 16 out of 500. Chakra absorption technique. LV5. 300. 5000. LV5. 810. 5000. Healing technique. LV3. 70/1000. Rasengan. LV1. 5/200. Illusion. Sharingan. LV6. 13/10000. Heart reflecting technique. LV6. 3175/10000. LV7. 1/20000. Swordsmanship. LV5. 490/5000. LV5. 1025/5000. Chakra control. LV4. 146/2000. LV4. 410/2000. 3 body technique. LV3. 0/0. Instant body technique. LV4. 0/0. Ninja tool throwing. LV5. 0/0. Fire style: House of Fairy Fire technique. LV5. 0/0. Magic: Shackle technique. LV5. 00. It has increased a little, Qingming murmured as he looked at the spirit attribute on the panel, which had increased from 14 to 15. Just now, when the reflection of the heart technique was upgraded from LV6 to LV7, he felt that his mental power was stronger, and guessed that it might be because of the increase in the spirit attribute. Now it is indeed true. At the beginning, when his reflection of the heart technique was upgraded from LV5 to LV6, the spirit attribute increased a little. Unexpectedly, it increased a little this time. This is really a pleasant surprise, muttering, Qingming began to carefully feel the changes brought to him by the spiritual attribute. After a moment, he opened his eyes. Then, a mixed expression appeared on his face. The good news is that this improvement in the spirit attribute can probably increase his chakra limit by about 6,000 points again. In other words, in the near future, his chakra limit will reach 35,000 points. In addition, the chakra recovery speed spirit attribute has increased from 14 to 15, which can allow him to recover about 4,000 more chakra points every day. That is, from the original 17,000 points to the current 21,000 points. These are all worth being happy about, but there are also concerns. That is, with the improvement of the spiritual attribute this time, the gap between his spiritual and physical has become larger. Last time, after his Sharingan evolved into 3 Magatama, the spiritual attribute was 3 points higher than the physical attribute. Now, with 1 more point, the gap has widened to 4 points. Moreover, it is foreseeable that it will not be long before his Sharingan will evolve again, and then the spiritual attribute will skyrocket, and the gap will widen again. As for the consequences of the huge gap between the body and the spirit, Uchiha Itachi has already given the answer. The opponent opened the Mangekyo too early, and the mental power was too strong, which caused great pressure on the body, and then induced a genetic disease. Qingming does not want to end up like the other party, who needs to rely on drugs to relieve the disease. Although not every ninja with a blood limit will get a bloodline disease, it is certain that the more geniuses are, the more likely they are to get the disease. Qingming glanced at the current evolution of his Sharingan, 5115, 10,000. After the reflection of the heart technique was upgraded from LV6 to LV7, as he thought, the effect of promoting the Sharingan was once again improved. Now, every time he practiced it, his Sharingan could gain a little evolution. In this way, he only needed to gain less than 5,000 points of proficiency to evolve his Sharingan into a Mangekyo. And 5,000 points of proficiency only required 800,000 points of chakra. Even if there was no additional source of chakra, Qingming could accumulate this chakra within 40 days with only the 21,000 points of chakra that he could recover every day. And if there was an external chakra supply, then this time would be even shorter. According to this calculation, he was a genius anyway, and being a genius meant there was a risk of illness, and Qingming didn't want to gamble. Therefore, improving the physique attribute was imminent. Chapter 133 Discovery. Improve your physique, Qingming murmured, and instinctively cast his eyes on the swordsmanship column. According to previous experience, improving the level of swordsmanship should increase the physique attribute. But since he combined Konoha-style swordsmanship and Uchiha-style swordsmanship to create his own swordsmanship, he has not had the opportunity to practice this technique properly. So, to this day, not only have the various tricks he imagined not been developed, but even the level has stagnated. In the past 2 or 3 months, he has only increased his proficiency by 1,000 points. Now, his level is only LV5, 1025, 5,000. Even so, if he wants to upgrade to LV6, I don't know when it will take. Obviously, Qingming can't wait. It seems that I can only think of another way. After a pause, Qingming began to look through the memories in his mind, looking for ways to improve the physique attribute. The first thing he thought of was the third Raikage, who he had just met not long ago. The other party rushed through the crowd of rock ninjas, ignoring all kinds of attacks, which left a deep impression on him. With this kind of physique, if you say that the physique attribute is not high, he would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. But to train this body, not only does it require extremely high talent and perseverance, but also the secret ninjutsu of the hidden cloud village, the lightning chakra mode. Talent and patience, he has a proficiency panel, which can be ignored, but the lightning chakra mode is not so easy to obtain. Although it is only a B-level ninjutsu, it is highly confidential in the hidden cloud village and ordinary people can't get it at all. Moreover, even if he gets it, he has to develop lightning attribute chakra. And this will take a long time. Therefore, this plan can be put aside for the time being. Similarly, Qingming thought of Konoha's 8 gates of Dunjia. This technique is a pure physical technique. When it is practiced to perfection, its power is even more terrifying than the lightning chakra mode. Even Uchiha Madara has to be called the strongest physical technique. Of course, Uchiha Madara actually praised Might Guy more, but this did not prevent the 8 gates of Dunjia from becoming the strongest physical technique. However, the 8 gates of Dunjia is a forbidden technique, and even in Konoha, it is not something that ordinary people can see. Even Qingming doubted whether Konoha had a complete inheritance. It is possible that only Might Guy and Might Guy in the entire Konoha knew the complete practice method. Now that there is a lot of chaos, it is impossible for him to find these 2 people immediately and get the practice method from them. What's more, this technique is not a small damage to the body. In the early stage, it will definitely weaken his physique attribute. Qingming estimates that it will definitely not be able to achieve balance in a short time if he practices it. Many uncertainties made Qingming temporarily give up the plan to search for this technique. In this case, there is only one way to go. Thinking of this in his heart, Qingming turned his attention to the healing technique. Of course, it is not to rely on this technique to improve the physique attribute. It can't do this. Qingming's goal is a higher level medical ninjutsu with the same origin, that is, the power of Yang Dun. As we all know, in the ninja world, Yang escape represents physical strength, and physical strength is physique in his case. Therefore, it is feasible to use medical ninjutsu to strengthen physique. There are many examples in the ninja world about this, such as Tsunade's creative regeneration, Shenning's physical activation, etc., which are all strengthening certain aspects of physique. As long as he follows the instinct of the body and uses the power of Yang escape to nourish cells throughout the body, he can complete the strengthening of physique. As for the slow speed, don't worry about it. As long as he can get the medical ninjutsu to a high enough level, all problems will be solved. With a plan in mind, Qingming no longer thought about it, and continued to work on reflection of the heart. Improving physical fitness is all later. Now, the first thing he has to do is to improve the evolution of the Sharingan. Qingming would rather wait for the improvement of the physique attribute later than wait for the physique to improve, but the evolution of the Sharingan is still a long way off. In addition, if he could develop his Sharingan to the edge of promotion in advance, he would have a trump card at the critical moment. If he was trapped in the land of Earth, he could forcefully open his main Gekyo Sharingan and fight his way out. Of course, this was only the worst outcome. Qingming would definitely not reveal his main Gekyo Sharingan unless it was absolutely necessary. As the saying goes, a tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Danzo and some of the Konoha high-ranking officials already disliked the Uchiha clan. If they knew that he had the same eyes as Uchiha Madara, wouldn't they be mentally unbalanced? At that time, who knows what kind of despicable moves they would use. Qingming had not forgotten the attack by the two root ninjas on his way to the battlefield after the Chunin exam. Anyway, he would definitely not reveal his main Gekyo Sharingan before he dealt with Danzo. Shaking his head, Qingming threw all these distracting thoughts behind him and began to perform the heart reflection technique over and over again. It must be said that the effect of the reflection heart technique after it was upgraded to level 7 was really obvious. Almost every time he performed it, he could feel the improvement of the Sharingan, and the special chakra in his brain was much more than when it was level 6. Time passed by minute by minute. 20 minutes later, Qingming stopped performing the technique and opened his eyes. At this time, his chakra had dropped to more than 9,000 points. Qingming stood up and came to a cloud ninja. In the blink of an eye, he completed the seal, pressed his palm, and performed the chakra absorption technique. A large amount of mental energy and physical energy was extracted by Qingming. After a round of transformation, it turned into a stream of chakra, which continuously poured into his body. In just a few breaths, his chakra increased by nearly 4,000 points. Qingming looked at the cloud ninja who was almost out of breath, loosened his palm, and then walked towards the next person. The closest one happened to be a rock ninja. Qingming didn't care about the other party's identity, and stretched out his hand to extract the other party's mental energy and physical energy. But at this moment, a subtle sound came from under the rock ninja, like the sound of some small animal crawling. In an instant, Qingming's spirit was highly tense, and the Sharingan opened instantly, and the dagger on his waist also appeared in his hand. Qingming carefully turned to the side, and saw a pair of small black eyes. "Rat," Qingming murmured, as if relieved, and lowered the dagger slightly. But at this moment, he suddenly stabbed out with a sword, and in the humanized astonishment of the mouse, the sword pierced its body. Blood spilled out, the mouse made a piercing squeak, and then disappeared. It is indeed a summoned beast. Looking at the mouse that disappeared without a trace in front of him, Qingming's expression was a little ugly. Chapter 134 Bluffing. Squeak. Just after the summoned beast rat was seriously injured by Qingming, two more rats came out from under the other two rock ninjas. And they ran out of the cave at a very fast speed. Qingming carefully sensed these rats and found that it was difficult to sense their existence if he didn't stare at them. Although this was due to the fact that they were too weak and difficult to be discovered, more of it was actually because of their talents. Qingming found that they seemed to be able to actively hide their own breath, greatly reducing their sense of existence. It was for this reason that he didn't notice their infiltration when he was practicing. After figuring out where the problem was, Qingming secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Then, with a flick of his wrist, two shurikens flew out of his hand and nailed into the bodies of the two rats before they left his sight. Accompanied by a squeaking sound, Qingming rushed out of the cave. If he was greedy, he could completely drain the spiritual energy and physical energy of several cloud ninjas and rock ninjas before leaving, but just in case, he rushed out of the hiding cave at the first time. Facts have proved that his caution is right. Just as he rushed out of the cave, several kunai were shot at him. In the scarlet pupils, the Sharingan spun rapidly. With just one glance, Qingming saw the detonating tags tied to the backs of several kunai. Without any hesitation, Qingming dodged and avoided the sneak attack of the kunai. Then, He kicked the ground with both feet and instantly opened up a distance. And in the next moment, several explosions sounded in succession, accompanied by flashes of fire, and the entrance of the cave behind him collapsed. It can be imagined that if he had just coveted that little bit of chakra and thought he had a hostage in his hand, the enemy in the dark would not have made a move at will. Now, he is probably blocked inside. Facts have proved that the enemy does not care about the 2 Kumo ninjas and the 3 Iwa ninjas at all. I just don't know which side this person in the dark is on. Qingming was puzzled and looked in the direction where the kunai came from, and then saw a dusty Iwagakure in there. Obviously, the other party had just arrived. Before, he probably feared to alert the enemy, so he didn't approach, but let the summoned beast, the rat, to explore first. After the rat was severely injured by him and gave an alarm, he hurried over. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late and failed to block Qingming in the cave. Just as the two sides were confronting each other, a dozen rats suddenly chased from behind, surrounded the Iwagakure, and made a squeak noise. The Iwagakure seemed to understand what they said, and his expression kept changing with the rats' calls. In the end, he became completely gloomy. Go Shanayang stared at Qingming and gritted his teeth and said, "Uchiha boy, you are so good, you dare to kill Zyaoki." Zyaoki? Killed? Qingming was stunned when he heard this, and then he realized that the Zyaoki the other party was talking about should be the summoned beast, the rat. But, it's dead. To be honest, Qingming was a little surprised. After all, after he made his move, the other party had already lifted the summoning technique and returned to where he was. Qingming originally thought that the other party would save his life, but now it seems that his sword still took his life. However, 3 ninjas from your village are still buried in the cave and their lives are unknown, while you are here entangled in the death of a summoned beast. Qingming shook his head and could only say that this was very Iwagakure. Because Inoki followed the principle of quantity and merit, he greatly lowered the admission requirements and graduation threshold of Iwagakure ninjas, although he cultivated the largest group of ninjas in the ninja world. But at the same time, it also led to 2 consequences, that is, the quality of Iwagakure ninjas was uneven, and the bottom-level Iwagakure ninjas looked abnormally cheap. It is precisely because of this that many high-level Iwagakure ninjas do not care about the death of their subordinates. What's more, they will deliberately arrange for them to die, using the lives of these bottom-level ninjas to consume the enemy's chakra and energy. When the enemy is not in good condition, they will personally take action and finally complete the task. Obviously, the Iwagakure in front of him is this kind of person. The other party didn't care about the 3 captured Iwagakure ninjas. Perhaps in his eyes, the lives of these 3 people were not as important as the summoned beast, the rat. However, what does this have to do with him? He is not an Iwagakure ninja, why should he care so much? Next, he only needs to think about how to deal with the other party as soon as possible and leave here. With this thought, Qingming immediately activated the Sharingan, wanting to hypnotize the other party and create an opportunity. However, this Iwagakure was obviously not easy to deal with. The other party seemed angry, but in fact he had been alert to Qingming's actions. The moment he activated the Sharingan, he immediately looked away. Moreover, he threw out 2 thin senbon, which shot at his eyes at a very fast speed. Seeing the other party's reaction, Qingming uttered a light and dodged the attack of the senbon. After that, without any pause, he threw several shurikens with his backhand, blocking the other party's retreat with incomparable accuracy. That's right, it was a retreat. Just now, Goshanyangai showed all kinds of anger, and the look in his eyes that he wanted to kill him to avenge the rat, etc., all of which were just performances. The opponent had never thought of confronting him head-on, so he started to run away the moment he activated his Sharingan. Recalling everything just now, Qingming finally remembered that the opponent's expression was unnatural for a moment when he saw his 3 Magatama Sharingan. Obviously, from that time on, the opponent had planned to escape. In fact, Qingming estimated that if the opponent had known that he was an Uchiha ninja who had activated the 3 Magatama Sharingan, he would probably not come. However, since he came, he couldn't let him leave easily. With this thought, Qingming flew out, drew his short sword, and fought with Goshanyangai, who had just been stopped by the shuriken. Ding ding dang dang, the kunai and the short sword collided, and sparks burst out. Qingming made a full-strength attack, and the combination of Sharingan and swordsmanship only took a moment to gain an absolute upper hand. This is only natural. Although Takayama Yoichi is a special Jonin, he is good at tracking, not direct combat. In terms of direct combat power, he is only slightly stronger than an ordinary Chunin. Therefore, under Qingming's full-strength attack, there is not much room for him to fight back. In fact, he can't even perform a ninjutsu. And this is also the common experience of most ninjas whose strength is lower than Qingming. Under the watchful eyes of his level 5 swordsmanship and 3 Magatama Sharingan, people with insufficient strength have no chance to slowly form hand seals. Once they really do this, Qingming can take advantage of this opportunity to kill them instantly. In this respect, he is somewhat similar to the samurai of the Iron Country. However, the samurai of the Iron Country relies on rich combat experience to find the flaws of the ninja, while he relies on the Sharingan. But no matter which method is used, the final result is the same, that is, the ninja with insufficient strength can't take a few moves in their hands. Chapter 135 Reaction. Puff! The sound of a sharp blade piercing flesh was heard. Goshinai looked at the dagger that was stabbed straight into his heart and wanted to say something, but he opened his mouth and spit out some blood, but nothing came out. Qingming looked at him expressionlessly, and with a slight force on his right hand, he pulled out the dagger. Goshinai took 2 steps back and stared at Qingming, his eyes full of unwillingness, but in the end he fell down helplessly. Fire style, great fireball technique. Looking at the corpse on the ground, Qingming quickly completed the seal with both hands, opened his mouth, and spit out a large fireball with a diameter of 2 meters. The fireball fell on the corpse, making a sizzling sound, and soon burned Goshinai beyond recognition. As for burning to ashes, that's unrealistic. His fire style can't reach that kind of power. However, this is enough. Qingming just doesn't want the Hidden Rock Village to get the memories related to Goshinai from his brain, not necessarily to grind him to ashes. As for concealing the death of the other party, Qingming didn't intend to do it, and he couldn't do it. After all, those rats were not all dead. As long as the Hidden Rock Village could find them, they would definitely find out the death of Goshinai. In this case, there was no need to waste energy to cover it up. On the contrary, those people in the cave, although they have been in a coma, they don't know what Qingming did to them. But this does not mean that the Hidden Rock Village can't check it out. So, in order to prevent the secret from being exposed, these people must die. What? You ask, why not keep them and continue to extract chakra? It's very simple. Since the Hidden Rock Village can find them once by following some clues, it is possible to find them a second time. In this way, the benefits of keeping them are far greater than the risks. Therefore, Qingming will not waste energy to transfer them. When he came to the entrance of the cave, Qingming looked at the collapsed cave, thought about it, raised his right hand, concentrated his mind, and in a short while, a high-density chakra ball was condensed in his palm. That's right, it was the Rasengan. Qingming stretched out his right hand and pressed the Rasengan on the gravel. A rotating force was transmitted, and in the blink of an eye, the surrounding gravel was thrown aside. Qingming did not stop. After moving forward for a while, he cast the Rasengan again, and continued to move forward in the same way. In fact, this is because Qingming's Rasengan has just started, and he cannot condense too much chakra, otherwise he can open up the entire passage at once. A few minutes later, Qingming finally returned to the cave. At this time, the 3 rock ninjas and 2 cloud ninjas were still alive. Qingming did not waste time, and went forward directly, casting the chakra absorption technique to extract as much of their mental and physical energy as possible. Soon, the chakra in Qingming's body reached an overflowing state. However, the few people on the ground were still not drained. In this regard, Qingming could only shake his head regretfully. He didn't have time to stay here for a long time, so he had to give up. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, 5 kunai were thrown by Qingming casually and accurately pierced into the hearts of the 5 people. Then, the 5 people's bodies trembled unconsciously. And then they lost their lives in their sleep. Then, Qingming once again performed the fire style, great fireball technique, burned all 5 bodies, and then left the cave. In order to be on the safe side, Qingming did not immediately go to the next hiding place, but first walked around the area for a few times. After confirming that no one or other messy things were following him, he quietly went to another hiding place. There were also several Cloud Ninja and Rock Ninja captives there. According to the time calculation, their physical condition should have recovered almost enough, and they can carry out the next round of harvesting. Thinking of this, Qingming did not want to delay for a minute, and his steps became faster and faster. After a while, he arrived at the destination. After looking around and confirming that there was no problem, Qingming walked into the hiding place and soon began a new round of training. It was night. In a small hut at the headquarters of the last line of defense of Iwagakure village, an Iwagakure Jonin saluted the old man above him and said, "Elder." Hearing this call, the old man put down the documents in his hand, glanced at the Iwagakure Jonin below, and said with a smile, "It's Oshikowa." "What's the matter?" Reporting to the elder, "Something happened to Yoichi?" Koichi said in a serious tone. Yoichi? The Iwagakure elder was stunned for a while when he heard the name. After a moment, he seemed to remember something and suddenly said, "Oh, it's that kid Takayama Yoichi. What happened to him, elder?" "According to the requirements, he should have contacted us half an hour ago, but until now, we have not received any news, so we think he may have died," Koichi replied in detail. Hearing this, the Iwagakure elder immediately became serious and said, "I remember that he was investigating the mysterious ninja and the recent disappearances of peripheral ninjas, right?" "Yes, elder," Koichi replied. "There is no clue about the mysterious ninja for the time being, but as for the disappearances of peripheral ninjas, from the last contact of Takayama Jonin, he seems to have a clue." "Then what?" Iwagakure elder asked. "Nothing happened," Koichi shook his head and said. "After that routine contact, Takayama Jonin disappeared." Hearing this, the Iwagakure elder pondered for a moment and said, "You mean, Takayama Jonin found out something and was silenced?" 9 out of 10, Koichi replied affirmatively. "Can you confirm the location?" Iwagakure elder asked again. "Yes," Koichi replied. "Takayama Jonin has a blood contract with a hidden rat lineage. Whenever he's on a mission, he will summon some hidden rat lineage. As long as we find the leader of the hidden rat lineage, we should be able to determine the place where Takayama Jonin finally sacrificed his life." However, after hearing his words, Elder Iwagakure fell silent. After a long while, he said, "Let's put Aoshin's affairs aside for now. Our first priority now is to cooperate with the actions of the main force. The intention of the main force's actions will be exposed tomorrow morning at the earliest and tomorrow noon at the latest. At that time, we will need to hold back the Cloud Ninja." As for Aoshin's affairs, the Iwagakure elders pondered for a while before continuing. "Judging from the number of people who have disappeared recently, there are at most a few scoundrels who are fishing in troubled waters. As long as they continue to attack, they will not be able to stay away from this battlefield. And when the main force arrives tomorrow, they will be fishing the net and it will be difficult to escape. At that time, they can be easily solved by sending some people. So, don't worry about them for the time being." Finally, the Iwagakure elder said earnestly, "Koichi, you have to remember that the more critical the moment is, the more you have to distinguish between the primary and the secondary. The Cloud Ninja is our main target. As for the others, they are secondary. Do you understand?" "Thank you for your teachings, elder." "I understand," Koichi replied seriously. "It's over today. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Choice. The next day. In the morning. In front of the last line of defense of the Hidden Rock Village, the third Raikage, wrapped in lightning and barehanded, once again charged forward alone. There were 5 Hidden Rock Ninjas to deal with him, and they were all real Jonin. Even so, these Hidden Rock Ninjas did not dare to confront the third Raikage head-on, but only covered each other and used various ninjutsu and fighting skills to contain him. The whole process was extremely dangerous. If the third Raikage found an opportunity without good coordination, the result would be serious injury or death. Therefore, the 5 Hidden Rock Ninjas present were very nervous. Especially today, they also received a secret order to hold back the third Raikage no matter what, and must not let the other party leave the battle. This made them even more nervous. The third Raikage glanced at the 5 people and instinctively felt something was wrong, but he said where the problem was. After all, they were all carefully selected Jonin. Although the 5 Hidden Rock Ninjas were nervous, they did not show any abnormality on their faces. Even the process of the battle did not show such signs. Time passed by minute, and the third Raikage still did not find anything unusual. So, he stopped thinking about it, and as soon as he thought about it, he would go all out and use his absolute strength to break the doubts in his heart. Third Generation Master, "There is urgent information, please return to the headquarters immediately." However, just as he was about to take action, a voice suddenly appeared in his mind, and the third Raikage knew who the owner of the voice was. The other party was one of his subordinates, who mastered a mental secret technique that could transmit sound to any target within a certain range. But what does the other party mean by this? Urgent information? Without time to think about it, the third Raikage planned to leave the battle first, and then go back to see what happened. He still trusted these subordinates very much, knowing that if it was not a matter of utmost urgency, these people would never interrupt his offensive rhythm. And once the other party did this, it meant that the situation must be bad and he had to deal with it personally. With this thought, the third Raikage forced the 5 surrounding Iwagakure to retreat with a few moves, and then jumped up, intending to break out of the encirclement and return to the rear. But he didn't expect that when these 5 people saw that he was going to retreat, they risked being seriously injured by him and forcibly blocked his way. At this moment, the third Raikage finally knew what he felt was wrong before. Compared with the rock ninja he met in the past few days, the 5 rock ninjas in front of him were obviously more conservative when fighting. But just when he was about to withdraw, these people showed extraordinary initiative, even at the risk of their lives. Obviously, their behavior before and after was very contradictory. Before, this sign was not obvious, and the 5 opponents would only stick to him like a dogskin plaster when he relaxed his offensive. But when he strengthened his offensive, these people would quickly return to conservative posture. Before that, he was focused on attacking and didn't pay special attention to this, so he just instinctively noticed something wrong. Now that he was going to withdraw, these people finally couldn't sit still. And all of a sudden, the contradictions were completely exposed. It was because of this that he finally reacted. However, the more this happened, the more the third Raikage was sure that something was wrong in the rear, otherwise the other party would not have spent so much effort to keep him here. That's right, the third Raikage had already seen the purpose of their inconsistent behavior, which was to drag him on the battlefield. In this case, I can't stay here. With this thought, the third Raikage shouted, "Get out!" Before he finished speaking, he activated the strongest state of the lightning chakra mode. With a crackling sound, it seemed that the real lightning rushed out and formed a thick layer of armor on his body surface. This is the strongest lightning chakra mode of the third Raikage in his full strength state. At this time, let alone ordinary weapons and ninjutsu, even the wind ninjutsu that most restrains lightning ninjutsu can't cause him any harm. Bang! The third Raikage flashed and disappeared in front of the 5 Iwagakure in an instant. The next moment, before the 2 Iwagakure could react, they were violently knocked away by the third Raikage, and they died before they even hit the ground. The remaining 3 Iwagakure saw this scene and all stopped. Although the order given to them by their superiors was to hold back the third Raikage, that was based on the premise that there was hope. But with the opponent's strength, what could they do to stop him? They didn't want to commit suicide. HMPH, seeing this, the third Raikage snorted coldly, and then left without looking back. In the distance, Qingming stared at the third Raikage who left with a swagger, shaking his head in silence. Then, he lifted the shadow clone technique. Bang! A cloud of chakra smoke dispersed, and the figure of Qingming disappeared, at the same time. In a relatively hidden cave. Qingming, who was practicing, suddenly opened his eyes, then quickly closed them again, and began to browse the memories that suddenly appeared in his mind. After a moment, he opened his eyes again and muttered, "It seems that this battle is about to end." With a god's perspective, he could easily infer the cause and effect from the third Raikage's behavior. If he guessed correctly, it should be that the Cloud Ninja discovered the conspiracy of the Hidden Rock Village and notified the third Raikage. Therefore, the other party rushed back in a hurry. After the other party learned that they were about to be surrounded, they had 2 choices. One is to burn their boats and continue to attack, break through the last line of defense of the Hidden Rock Village before the Hidden Rock Army surrounded them, rush into the Hidden Rock Village, and regain the initiative. The second is to retreat immediately and rush out of the gap before the Hidden Rock Army formed a complete encirclement. The former needs to consider the time issue. If they cannot enter the Hidden Rock Village before the Hidden Rock Army surrounds them, what awaits the Cloud Ninjas is being attacked from both inside and outside. And this is very likely. Although the third Raikage is strong, the third Tsuchikage, who is in charge of the Hidden Rock Village, is not an easy person to deal with. The opponent's Dust Release ninjutsu is not completely immune to the Thunder Release armor. In this way, coupled with the obstruction of the last line of defense, It is basically impossible for the third Raikage to break through the hidden rock village in a short time. Then they only have the second option. But it is not so easy to run away. Let's not talk about whether they can find a suitable opportunity, just the rock ninjas on the battlefield in front of them will not let them leave easily. This time, the cloud ninjas will have to pay some price. Then what about me? Can I gain some benefits from it? Qingming thought in his heart and soon came up with a plan. Needless to say, for a period of time in the future, both the cloud ninjas and the rock ninjas will focus on each other. This means that he has more room for activities. Moreover, Qingming has no doubt that the situation will be very chaotic in the future, and the Cloud Village will not let the third generation of Raikage stay to cover the retreat at the beginning. At first, they must flee together, and even some Cloud Ninjas will be sacrificed to cover the third generation of Raikage and the large army to evacuate. Only when the situation is completely broken, the third generation of Raikage will use himself as bait to delay the army of the Rock Village, thus creating an opportunity for other Cloud Ninjas to escape. Even so, those Cloud Ninjas will be hunted down. After all, no matter how strong the third generation of Raikage is, he is only one person and it is impossible to stop an army of 10,000. Therefore, this process is bound to be chaotic. And chaos means opportunity. He can take advantage of the opportunity to plunder chakra and thus accelerate his own growth. Tomorrow, I will resume 3 updates. Chapter 137 Infiltration. Very good, let's do it. With a decision, Qingming began to deal with the captives in his hands. Of course, he didn't kill them all directly. That would inevitably cause a lot of waste. Qingming would not be so extravagant. Before killing these people, he had to draw their spiritual energy and physical energy one last time to squeeze out their surplus value to the maximum. For this, he spent more than 2 hours. It was not because the places where these people were placed were far apart, but because his body could only accommodate a limited amount of chakra and could not draw too much chakra at one time. In order to avoid waste, Qingming could only pause halfway and use the reflection heart technique to consume excess chakra. Because of this, it took more than 2 hours. At this time, the Cloud Ninja had retreated. It was almost the same as Qingming expected. The Cloud Ninja did not let the third Raikage cover the retreat at the beginning. Instead, it organized a part of the manpower to contain the Rock Ninja on the last line of defense, and the rest of the people retreated quickly under the leadership of the third Raikage. When Qingming arrived at the battlefield, the battle here had already entered its final stage, and the Cloud Ninjas who were responsible for the rear were almost all dead or wounded. Correspondingly, only a small number of Rock Ninjas remained here. Qingming glanced at the northwest direction, and most of the rest were chasing the main force of the Cloud Ninjas. However, Qingming was not in a hurry to catch up immediately, because there was a shadow clone watching over there, and when he needed to move, the shadow clone would naturally notify him. On the other hand, Qingming looked at the wounded Rock Ninjas who were being transported to the rear, and felt that it was an opportunity. If he could sneak into the medical team of the hidden Rock Village, then these wounded would be ready-made chakra batteries. Not only that, he might also be able to take the opportunity to brush up his proficiency in healing techniques, thus laying a solid foundation for learning more advanced medical ninjutsu in the future. Qingming couldn't help but be tempted by the idea of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. After thinking for a long time, he decided to give it a try. With this thought in mind, Qingming immediately hid his figure and moved towards the rear of the battlefield, where the medical ninjas of the hidden Rock Village were concentrated. Perhaps because of the victory in front, the defense of the Rock Ninja here was a little lax, and Qingming sneaked in with a little effort. Following a medical ninja into the tent, Qingming suddenly said, "Hi." Murikashi was startled by the sudden voice, and immediately turned back and jumped, pulling away while pulling out a kunai and looking at Qingming. However, what caught his eyes was a pair of blood-red eyes. Then, he fell into an illusion. Just as his consciousness was sinking, Murikashi struggled to spit out 3 words, Sharingan. This Sharingan is really famous. Hearing Murikashi's last words, Qingming didn't know whether he was mocking or happy, and suddenly said this. Think about another timeline more than 10 years later, the Uchiha clan was exterminated. How many young people in the ninja world still remember the reputation of the Sharingan? And how much deterrence did Konoha lose because of this? Shaking his head, Qingming didn't think about it anymore. He then began to guide Morimas to recall some basic information such as his name, mission, and the distribution of personnel in the camp. With this information, Qingming quickly gained a comprehensive understanding of this temporary camp, and he was not afraid of being exposed when he went out. So Qingming did not stay any longer, knocked Morima's unconscious, drained his chakra, and performed the transformation technique to become the other party's appearance. Qingming was about to leave, but after thinking about it, he came back to Morima's, and instantly cut his throat with his right hand as a knife. Catch! A crisp bone-breaking sound rang out. Morima's breathing was blocked, his face flushed, and after struggling for a while, he woke up. However, he was greeted by another hypnosis. Morima's closed his eyes involuntarily, and then completely lost his life in his sleep. Looking at the other party's body, Qingming had an idea, and a high-density chakra ball slowly condensed in the palm of his right hand. That's right, it was the Rasengan. Qingming pressed the Rasengan to the ground. The moment the chakra ball in his palm touched the ground, it dug a big hole silently, just like a hot knife cutting butter. Qingming threw Morikazu's body into the hole, and then filled it back with soil and rocks, completing an extremely unprofessional destruction of the body. There was no other way. He had not learned any means of dealing with corpses, so he could only make do with it and bury it hastily. This is much better than leaving it there, isn't it? Muttering, Qingming did not linger any longer and walked out of the tent. According to Morikazu's memory, he soon came to the place where the wounded were placed. Avoiding those rock ninjas who were more familiar with the original body, Qingming went straight to the tent. As soon as he entered it, he smelled a strong smell of blood. Looking up, he saw several rock ninjas lying on simple beds, groaning in pain from time to time. On their bodies, the places where the bandages were bandaged were bleeding, and it was obvious that they were seriously injured. Doctor, seeing Qingming coming, several Iwagakure ninjas were very excited. Unlike Konoha, there are not many medical ninjas in Iwagakure village. Most of them are still in the village. Even if they come out, they are mostly with the main group. There are really few left here. Originally, they were worried that it would not be their turn in a short time, but they never thought that they would see medical ninjas so soon. How could they not be excited? However, seeing these people like this, Qingming said coldly, "Don't move, I will come one by one." After that, regardless of how these people reacted, he walked straight to the nearest Iwagakure ninja. Trouble, the Iwagakure ninja saw Qingming coming towards him, endured the severe pain in his body, and said politely, "Yes." Qingming nodded slightly, carefully asked about the other party's injuries, and then reached out to untie the bandage on his waist, revealing the inch-deep wound inside. After confirming that it was indeed an external injury, Qingming secretly breathed a sigh of relief. There was no way, with his current half-baked level, he could only heal external injuries. Fortunately, the Cloud Ninja is not good at using poison, otherwise it would be really difficult to deal with. After quickly cleaning the wound for the other party, Qingming began to perform the healing technique to accelerate the cell division at the other party's wound. A few minutes later, Qingming removed his palm and said, "It's done." Hearing this, the rock ninja looked down and saw that the wound had healed, but the nearby epidermis was a little strange. In addition, there was a little pain. Without waiting for the other party to ask, Qingming said, "Your wound is only initially healed. You need to rest for a few days. Don't do strenuous exercise during this period. Thank you." "Thank you." Hearing this, the rock ninja thanked him repeatedly. Yet, Qingming simply responded and was about to walk towards the second person. But at this moment, his footsteps suddenly stopped, turned his head, and looked at the rock ninja on the bed. He seemed to have something to say, but after opening his mouth several times, he didn't say it. Chapter 138, Secret Pass. Seeing Qingming's hesitation, the Iwagakure on the bed thought there was something wrong with his injury, and asked nervously, "What's wrong?" Qingming hesitated for a moment. Finally, he pretended to be embarrassed and said, "You know, there are many injured ninjas on our side in this war, and there are only a few medical ninjas. I want to reduce the pain for more companions, but what?" The Iwagakure who had just been cured by Qingming asked, and the others also pricked up their ears. Qingming glanced at them, as if he had made up his mind, and said, "But my chakra is not enough, and I can't help too many people at all. Then is there anything we can do to help you?" The one who spoke was not the Iwagakure in front of Qingming, but another Iwagakure who was seriously injured. Obviously, the other party wanted to be treated very much, and immediately we pulled everyone in. Qingming also took advantage of the situation and immediately said, "I have an ninjutsu that can absorb chakra. 4 other companions, are you willing to contribute some chakra?" That's right, Qingming didn't plan to use force this time, but planned to build a plank road in the open, sneak through Changkang, and indirectly obtain chakra. After all, this is the enemy's territory, and it is easy to be discovered if you use force. In this case, it is better to put everything on the table and use justice to pressure others. Although this will not drain all their chakra at once, there will be more targets to choose from, and it is completely possible to win by quantity. Moreover, there is no need to worry about being discovered, because even if you are discovered, it doesn't matter. After all, he is really healing more people. Absorb chakra. Hearing Qingming's words, all the rock ninjas frowned. After all, chakra is a matter of life and death for them. For a while, the field fell into a strange silence. Is the process dangerous? The one who spoke was the seriously injured rock ninja. It can be seen that the other party is very anxious, so a word broke the deadlock. Absolutely not. Hearing this, Qingming immediately made a promise. Then, his voice weakened, and he said, and I won't absorb too much chakra, about half will be enough, mainly because there are too many wounded. Hearing his words, the brows of several rock ninjas finally relaxed. If it was just absorbing half, it would be acceptable. After all, the battle in the front was over. Next, they would definitely not go to the battlefield again, and this was the rear area, and there were people patrolling and guarding around, so they basically didn't encounter any danger. In this case, it's okay to contribute some chakra. With this thought, several rock ninjas in the tent said one after another, for the village, for our companions, we have no choice but to contribute some chakra. Haha, no choice but to do it. If you weren't waiting for me to save your life, would you do it so simply? Qingming sneered in his heart, but his face showed an expression of being moved to tears. Then, he looked at the rock ninja he had just cured. The other party hesitated for a moment, and then glanced at the other people in the tent. After finding that they were all staring at him, he sighed, stretched out his palm, and said righteously, "It is my duty." Obviously, he did not dare to do anything like crossing the river and destroying the bridge. Seeing this, Qingming smiled from the bottom of his heart, and then quickly completed the seal, performed the chakra absorption technique, and grabbed the other party's palm. In order to avoid scaring the other party, Qingming did not absorb the other party's chakra with all his strength, but only maintained a speed of 100 points per second. After noticing this, the rock ninja really relaxed a little. After more than 10 seconds, Qingming took the initiative to release the other party's palm and said, "It's okay, I will treat the injuries of others first." After saying that, he walked towards the rock ninja who had been speaking just now. The other party's injuries were quite serious, and there were bandages wrapped around several parts of his body. Just like before, Qingming first asked about the general situation, and after confirming that they were all external injuries, he untied the bandages and carefully examined the wounds. After a moment, he said confidently, "It's not a big problem, I can treat it." Hearing this, the rock ninja on the bed immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and before accepting the treatment, he said, "Just leave me 1/3 of your chakra later, I hope you can save more people." This Qingming hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded. Then, he said no more, and began to carefully clean the other party's wounds. After doing this, he began to perform the healing technique to treat the other party's injuries. This time it took a little longer, and it took almost a quarter of an hour to initially heal the other party's injuries. Qingming moved his palm away and instructed, "Your injuries are too serious, and you will need to recuperate for about a week. Don't do strenuous exercise during this period, okay? Thank you." As he said that, the rock ninja on the bed stretched out his palm. Qingming did not hesitate, and immediately followed suit, performing the chakra absorption technique and extracting about 2/3 of the chakra in the other party's body. In this way, Qingming quickly healed the injuries of the 7 rock ninjas in the tent. Of course, their chakra was also extracted. After leaving the tent, Qingming opened the panel and took a look. The proficiency of the healing technique increased by nearly 100 points, and the amount of chakra increased by about 3,000 points. To be honest, 3,000 points of chakra is really a bit too little. But in view of the rapid improvement of the healing technique, he endured it. Anyway, the meat is rotten in the pot, so why not use the chakra anywhere? Feeling the chakra that was about to overflow in his body, Qingming did not immediately go to the second wounded tent, but returned to his own residence. After confirming that no one had come, Qingming sat cross-legged and began to perform the heart reflection technique to consume the excess chakra in his body. An hour later, on Qingming's panel, the proficiency of the heart reflection technique increased by 60 points, and the evolution of the Sharingan also increased by 60 points. At this time, he still had half of his chakra left. Qingming did not delay any longer, and immediately walked out of his residence and appeared in the wounded tent again. The process was the same as before. He cured one person first, then gave the same reason, and then forced the rock ninjas to agree with him. He took the opportunity to improve his proficiency in the healing technique and harvested some chakra. After visiting 3 tents in succession and curing nearly 20 people, his chakra was full again. Qingming returned to his residence again and began to practice the reflection of the heart technique. When his chakra dropped to half again, he would set out again to heal the rock ninjas, accumulate proficiency in the healing technique, extract chakra, and repeat the cycle. In this way, from noon to afternoon, and from afternoon to evening, Qingming walked between the tents of the wounded in the identity of Senmushi, healing them non-stop, and occasionally taking a rest, which was a model of medical ninjas. During this period, his absorption of chakra was discovered by others as expected. But it did not attract much attention. After all, in addition to absorbing chakra, he was really wholeheartedly healing the rock ninjas. In this way, without in-depth investigation, it is naturally impossible to find any clues. There will be another update in the evening. Chapter 139, Decisive Battle. But it's almost time to leave, Qingming muttered to himself as he recalled the memory that suddenly appeared in his mind. That's right, just now, a shadow clone passed the information to him by releasing the ninjutsu, asking him to rush there as soon as possible. But before leaving, do you want to play a big game? Qingming glanced at the tents where the wounded lived with a burning gaze. With the trust he had just gained, Qingming was confident that he could instantly kill everyone in a tent without making any noise. But it was meaningless. First of all, he could kill silently, but he couldn't control silently. All his current illusions could only be released on a single person, and he couldn't control multiple people at the same time. This meant that he couldn't extract the chakra of these people, so there was no point in taking action. Secondly, these people had already been harvested by him once, and although there was still chakra in their bodies, it was not much. 6 or 7 people in a tent couldn't gather much chakra, so it was not worth a risk. Finally, and most importantly, he didn't want to cause trouble. Although he would not be discovered for a while after killing these people, he could not hide it for long. After all, the other rock ninjas were not blind. Next, he had to rush to the place where the cloud ninjas and the rock ninjas were fighting, and fish in troubled waters. If he was chased, it would be difficult for him to hide. Moreover, Qingming opened the panel and glanced at it. He saw that his healing technique had been upgraded from LV3, 70/1000, to LV4, 490/2000, and his heart reflection technique had been upgraded from LV7, 257/20000, to LV7, 512/20000. The income of nearly 150,000 chakra points was enough, and he could not be greedy anymore. With this thought, Qingming did not stay any longer and immediately sneaked out of the camp. Because of some of Morima's memories, this time was easier than when he sneaked in. It only took him a few minutes to leave this temporary camp. After that, he quickly rushed to the place where the cloud ninjas and the rock ninjas were fighting. According to the memory of the shadow clone, the moon was sparse. Qingming ran all the way, and finally arrived at the place where the shadow clones last stayed at midnight. However, there were no cloud ninja and rock ninja here, only some traces of the battle. Qingming glanced around and soon saw the marks left by other shadow clones in a conspicuous place. After that, he continued to move forward following the marks until dawn, when he finally met the 3 shadow clones. At this time, they continued to move forward. In the distance, a large group of cloud ninjas and a small number of rock ninjas following behind them could be vaguely seen. What's going on? Qingming came to a shadow clone and asked. Hearing this, the shadow clone replied quickly, to put it simply, the rock ninjas don't want the cloud ninjas to move so fast, and want to delay time, but they are not the opponents of the third raikage. Now they can only follow like this. You can see the specific situation yourself. As he said that, the shadow clone released the ninjutsu. Immediately, the other party's experience and memory emerged in Qingming's mind. In just a moment, Qingming had a new understanding of the current situation. In general, in the outer areas, the hidden rock village has formed an encirclement. But because the encirclement is too large, the troops cannot be concentrated and there is a risk of being broken. If you want to annihilate this elite cloud ninja, you must buy time, narrow the encirclement, and concentrate the troops. To this end, the Hidden Rock Village sent an elite force to try to stop the Cloud Ninja's advance. The place where the two sides fought was the place he arrived at midnight. At that time, the Shadow Clones thought that the final decisive battle would be staged there, so they hurriedly informed him of the news. Unexpectedly, when the battle was halfway through, the third-generation Raikage suddenly burst out with an extremely strong strength, and with his own strength, he forcibly tore the defense line formed by the elite rock ninjas, allowing the large Cloud Ninja army to continue to move forward. As a last resort, the Shadow Clones could only leave a mark and continue to follow. Similarly, after suffering a loss, those rock ninjas did not dare to block them head-on, and only dared to harass them from behind. Now, it depends on whether the Cloud Ninja will be the first to reach the encirclement and tear it apart, or whether the Rock Ninja will gather enough troops in advance and form an iron wall. It can be said that the Cloud Ninja and the Rock Ninja are now racing against time to see who can achieve the goal first. However, according to the memory of the previous life, it should be the Rock Village that completed the plan first, otherwise the third Raikage would not have been alone to cover the rear and create an opportunity for the Cloud Ninja to escape. I just don't know how long it will take at this point. Thinking so in his heart, Qingming asked the two Shadow Clones to release the ninjutsu. Bang bang, as the two groups of chakra smoke dispersed, the other two Shadow Clones disappeared, and Qingming was the only one left in the field. Afterwards, he followed the Cloud Ninja and the Rock Ninja alone, waiting for the final decisive battle to come. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, the sky was already bright. Neither the Cloud Ninja nor the Rock Ninja had any intention of stopping. Qingming naturally could not stop either. So far, he has not slept for a day and a night. Fortunately, he is not an ordinary person, so he can still go without sleep for a few days. In a flash, several hours have passed. It is close to noon. Inexplicably, Qingming felt a little depressed. He looked up at the sky. It was clear in the morning, but now it was covered with dark clouds. Crack! Suddenly, a flash of lightning tore through the clouds, illuminating the surroundings, and hurting everyone's eyes. Then, the rumbling of thunder resounded through the sky, making people raise their heads involuntarily. At this time, everyone had only one thought in their hearts, that is, the power of heaven and earth, which is beyond human power. Crack! Another flash of lightning flashed, illuminating the sky and the earth, and also illuminating the densely packed rock ninjas in front. Huh? Qingming suddenly opened his Sharingan and looked forward, only to see a large number of rock ninjas climbing over the hill and rapidly approaching here. Looking further away and to the sides, there were more rock ninjas gathering, densely packed, like ants, countless. Even Qingming was shocked by the scene. No wonder people say that when there are 10,000 people, there is no limit. Although there are less than 10,000 rock ninjas in front, their momentum is no less. Did you see that all the Cloud Ninjas have stopped? Crack! Another flash of lightning flashed. The next moment, a few drops of rain fell on Qingming's face. It's raining. Murmuring, Qingming looked up and saw that the raindrops in the sky were falling rapidly as if they were free. Haha, this rain comes at the right time. Suddenly, a loud laugh came from the front, attracting Qingming's attention. He looked up and saw a figure wrapped in lightning rushing out of the Cloud Ninja team and heading straight for the rock ninjas in front. Who else could it be if not the third Raikage? Chapter 140 split into two. Kill! Another roar came from the Cloud Ninja. Then, the second and third roars were heard. After the third Raikage rushed out, the Cloud Ninja did not stop and immediately rushed towards the rock ninja in front. For a moment, the shouts of killing shook the sky. Qingming looked at these people, thought about it, and approached them. It was not that he wanted to do something, but it was more convenient for him to respond to the situation. However, before he walked far, he saw an equally sneaky figure, wearing a black robe and a mask, obviously an Anbu ninja. But Qingming glanced at the other party's mask. There was no sign on it, and he didn't know which force was the spy. While Qingming was observing the other party, he seemed to have noticed something, and suddenly turned his head to look at him, and then his footsteps paused. Obviously, he also found Qingming. Just when Qingming was thinking about whether to open the Sharingan and use the hypnosis ability to keep the other party, he saw a flash body technique and disappeared from the spot. Looking at the figure of the other party rapidly going away, Qingming did not choose to chase, although if he tried his best, he should be able to catch up with the other party. But in that case, he would inevitably expose his whereabouts. Compared with the many rock ninjas and cloud ninjas in front of him, It was not worth his risk to take just one person. After a short pause, Qingming continued to move forward. When he came to a place not far away, he hit again. In a flash, 2 hours passed. This time, even if the third generation Raikage still charged forward, the other Cloud Ninjas fought hard, but they could not tear the formation of the Rock Ninjas for the second time. After 2 full hours, the Cloud Ninjas only advanced less than 1 kilometer. At this time, they were still surrounded by the Cloud Ninjas. Moreover, as time went by, more and more Rock Ninjas gathered here, and the pressure became greater and greater. The third generation Raikage instantly repelled several Rock Ninjas, jumped into the air, and looked around. I saw that the densely packed Rock Ninjas kept rushing here like a tide, and the Cloud Ninjas around him were like a dam, constantly washed away, and there was a risk of overturning at any time. The third Raikage knew that he had lost this battle. However, the third Raikage glanced at his subordinates who were fighting desperately, and said to himself, "These people must not all die here, you know, these people are the elite of the Hidden Cloud Village. Once all of them are lost, the Hidden Cloud Village will inevitably be seriously injured." After hesitating for just a few seconds, the third Raikage made up his mind, and then his eyes changed, and the lightning chakra mode was instantly operated to the limit by him. Accompanied by a crackling sound, materialized lightning appeared on his body, like a thick armor, giving him all-round protection. The third Raikage didn't waste any words, and immediately jumped out of the Cloud Ninja team for the second time, rushed into the densely packed Rock Ninja army, and began to kill frantically. In a short time, dozens of Rock Ninjas died under his hands. As a last resort, the Rock Ninja could only mobilize more people to besiege the third Raikage. Correspondingly, the pressure on the Cloud Ninja army was much less. Then, they began to move slowly towards the border. On the contrary, the third Raikage had no intention of breaking out, but was just killing crazily, attracting more and more Rock Ninja to come and besiege. So, after a while, the battlefield was divided into 2 parts. One part was the battle between the Rock Ninja and the Cloud Ninja, and the other part was the battle between the third Raikage and a group of Rock Ninja. As time passed, the distance between the 2 battlefields became farther and farther. Because the third Raikage attracted a large number of Rock Ninja, the Cloud Ninja army was almost about to break through the encirclement. At this time, a familiar voice sounded in the mind of the third Raikage. "Third generation, it's okay, you can break out." However, after hearing this, the third Raikage did not do it. He first glanced at his subordinates from a distance, then glanced at the many Rock Ninjas surrounding him, and then replied in his heart, "Heath, you go." "What? Third generation, what do you mean?" Heath's anxious voice echoed in the mind of the third Raikage. "Quiet," the third Raikage said in a low voice, stopping Heath's words, then sighed and said, "Heath, we lost." "I know, sir, but we can start over," Heath replied. "No," the third Raikage interrupted her and whispered, "we lost, and we have to pay the price. It's either you or me." Heath was silent. "Don't you see it yet?" the third Raikage continued. "Once I break through, the Hidden Rock Village will immediately mobilize all its manpower to surround you. This is something I don't want to see." "But, no buts." Heath wanted to say something, but was interrupted by the third Raikage. "Heath, you are the future of the Hidden Cloud Village. Protect yourself and don't let my sacrifice become worthless." The third Raikage said this at the end, and then expelled a wisp of Heath's mental power from his body. Qingming saw with his own eyes that the main force of the Cloud Ninja army paused for a while, but soon continued to break through and move forward, and the speed was getting faster and faster. At this point, Qingming was basically certain that the plot was still developing roughly as he remembered in his previous life. Although he didn't know how the third Raikage and his subordinates discussed it, there was no doubt that the other party was planning to leave alone. No, leaving alone was a bit inaccurate. After all, he was alone, and even if he was very strong, it would be difficult to stop thousands of Rock Ninjas. If it weren't for the Rock Village choosing to leave him between him and the Cloud Ninja army, even if he wanted to leave alone, he wouldn't have the chance. So, rather than leaving behind, it's better to say that he exchanged his life for his life. The third Raikage, with the tacit consent of the Rock Village, used his life to exchange for the chance for other Cloud Ninjas to escape. Of course, the Rock Village would not let those Cloud Ninjas go easily, and would definitely send out some people to chase them down. And Qingming now had to consider whether to stay here or keep up with the Cloud Ninja army. After just half a second of thinking, Qingming made a decision. He crossed his hands and performed the shadow clone technique. creating a shadow clone. Qingming looked at the shadow clone. Although he knew that the other party had understood what he wanted him to do, he still habitually asked, "I will leave this to you next." "Yes," the shadow clone simply responded, indicating that he understood. With the shadow clone to finish the mission, Qingming did not waste any more time and immediately chased in the direction where the cloud ninja fled. Yes, he finally chose another battlefield. On the one hand, it was more chaotic over there, leaving him more opportunities to fish in troubled waters. On the other hand, he was afraid that if he continued to stay here, he would be picked up by the hidden rock village and killed along the way. It is foreseeable that in the near future, in order to prevent the third Raikage from breaking through, the hidden rock village will definitely try to seal this place. By then, spies like them who are not willing to see the light will also be trapped. So, for his own safety, he chose to leave. Chapter 141 Action. 10 minutes later, Qingming rushed to another battlefield. Before he approached, he found a lone Sharingan. Qingming's eyes lit up and he was about to approach, but suddenly he seemed to have thought of something, and quickly opened his Sharingan and scanned the surroundings. However, the expected ambush was not found, and the opponent seemed to be just alone. Am I overthinking? Qingming was puzzled and decided to observe for a while. Soon, 2 minutes passed. Qingming still found nothing. The Sharingan below was still moving forward, and it seemed that he was planning to catch up with the main force. After thinking about it, Qingming no longer hesitated, formed a way seal with his hands, and appeared directly behind the opponent with a flash body technique. Bang! A hand knife fell, and the opponent fell directly to the ground. Qingming stood in place, vigilantly scanning the surroundings. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. After a full minute, nothing happened. Qingming finally confirmed that this was really just a lone Sharingan, not a bait. It turns out that I have been fighting wits and courage with the air. Shaking his head, Qingming no longer thought about it, grabbed the rock ninja on the ground, jumped into the forest, and came to a more hidden place. Papa Qingming shot left and right, and soon woke up the rock ninja on the ground. Then, without waiting for it to wake up completely, he cast the Genjutsu Sharingan to guide it to recall the information it needed. A few minutes later, Qingming learned the other party's name, Uchiha. The reason why the other party was left alone was that during the previous battle, he accidentally fell into a cloud ninja's illusion and fell into a corner. Because his teammates had died long ago and no one cared about him, he didn't wake up until not long ago. So, he was left alone. After figuring this out, Qingming was speechless. Sometimes things are so simple, but people think too complicated. However, Qingming didn't feel embarrassed at all. Even if he encountered this situation again next time, he would still do it. After all, compared to wasting a little time, his own life is more important. Who can guarantee that this won't be a trap next time? Therefore, when it's time to be cautious, you must not relax at all. But, Qingming looked at Uchiha, who was still immersed in the illusion, and felt that the other party's identity and experience were good, and perhaps he could save him a lot of trouble. Thinking of this in his heart, Qingming quickly completed the seal with both hands, and then pressed on his head, performing the chakra absorption technique. This time he was not like treating those rock ninja wounded, and he had to be careful, for fear that the other party would notice something unusual. This time, Qingming directly used the chakra absorption technique with all his strength, and in just less than 2 seconds, he drained the other party's chakra. After all, he was just a Sharingan, and there was not much chakra in his body. However, Qingming did not stop. He continued to extract the other party's spiritual energy and physical energy, converted it into chakra, and absorbed it into his body. After another 2 seconds, Qingming loosened his palm. At this time, Uchiha was dying, and he could no longer squeeze out any chakra. Crack! Qingming broke the opponent's neck, then formed a seal and performed the fire style. Great fireball technique, burning the opponent's body. Then, he performed the transformation technique and turned into the opponent's appearance, and continued to walk forward along the original path. Along the way, he saw a lot of corpses. Some of them were cloud ninjas, and some were rock ninjas, but he didn't see any wounded. It's okay for cloud ninjas, even if there are wounded, they are either taken away by their companions or killed by rock ninjas, and it is basically unlikely that they will stay. But rock ninjas are different. This is their home ground. It doesn't make sense that there are no wounded. Qingming was confused and stopped walking. He looked at the jungle on one side and his ears moved slightly. Indistinctly, He seemed to hear a painful groan. He heard this sound all day yesterday and it was very familiar. Without any hesitation, Qingming walked straight in the direction where the sound came from. However, before he walked far, a kunai flew over and nailed to the big tree in front of him. Qingming looked in the direction from which the kunai came, and saw Iwagakure standing on a tree branch, looking down at him. Name? Team number? Why are you here? A cold voice came out of the other party's mouth, as if he would be sent to hell if he answered one word wrong. Seeing this, Qingming hurriedly lowered his head, pretending to be terrified, and replied, "My name is Uchiha, and I belong to the E379 team. I was accidentally caught in an illusion during the battle just now. When I woke up, there was no one around me. Now I am rushing to the battlefield." "Why are you here?" Qingming glanced at the other party carefully, and at the same time glanced at several other places with his peripheral vision, and then continued, "I just heard a sound here, so I thought of coming over to take a look." After listening to his narration, the Iwagakure in front of him did not speak, as if judging the truth of his words. After a long while, he said coldly, "You have nothing to do here, Uchiha. I order you as a Jonin to rush to the battlefield immediately without delay. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes," Qingming hurriedly responded and turned to leave. But at this moment, the Iwagakure suddenly called him, "Wait a minute, you?" However, before he finished speaking, Qingming had already opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan. Even though the Iwagakure was very vigilant, he did not expect that Qingming actually had a Sharingan. So, at the moment of eye contact, he was hypnotized by Qingming. Although it was only a moment, it was enough for Qingming to launch an attack. Swish, 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 3 shurikens flew out of his hand. Sensing the danger, the Iwagakure broke free from the hypnosis, but he only blocked 1 shuriken. The other 2, one nailed to his left arm and the other nailed to his right leg, restricted his ability to form seals and escape. Taking this opportunity, Qingming used the instant body technique and approached the opponent at a very fast speed. On the way, he had already grasped the short sword in his hand. And the next moment he left, several kunai were inserted into the place where he was standing. Obviously, the opponent was not alone. But it was useless. Because the strongest one of the opponents was already close to him, as long as he was dealt with, the others would not be a concern. Qingming had already sensed the breath of the other people while talking. At most, they were at the level of Chunin and posed no threat to him at all. Even the strongest rock ninja in front of him was probably just a special Jonin. Generally speaking, the risk was controllable, so he took action. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and the level 5 swordsmanship was displayed by him, and combined with the 3 Magatama Sharingan, he once again showed the effect of appearing and disappearing like a ghost. In just a blink of an eye, Qingming left a deep scar on the body of the disabled rock ninja Jonin. Chapter 142 Great Harvest. Captain, seeing that the Iwagakure was almost pierced through the heart by Qingming's sword, several Iwagakure immediately screamed and jumped out at the same time to join forces to deal with Qingming. However, Qingming knocked down the first Iwagakure who jumped out with just a glance. Then, before he woke up from hypnosis, a shuriken flew over. The shuriken drew a beautiful arc in the air and finally accurately pierced his lower abdomen, causing him to lose his fighting power but not his life. At this moment, the other 2 Iwagakure were shocked and stopped in their tracks. "Be careful, don't look at him." At this time, the Iwagakure spoke. Hearing this, Qingming chuckled twice and launched another attack. Ding ding dang dang, the crisp sound of metal collisions rang out one after another. Qingming fought 1 against 3, and was not at a disadvantage at all. No, to be more precise, he was completely suppressing the 3 of them. Just 2 ordinary Chunins and a seriously injured special Jonin really couldn't make Qingming feel any pressure. If he didn't need to avoid the vital points and save their lives, Qingming could have ended the battle long ago. However, it's time to end it. Qingming glanced at the deeper part of the jungle. There, he could vaguely see some figures wrapped in bandages approaching, and behind them, there were more figures struggling to get up. Obviously, the groaning he heard before was from these wounded. The Iwagakure and the 3 Iwagakure in front of him were all guards. In order to avoid accidents, Qingming decided to reveal a trump card and end the battle as soon as possible. Ding, another kunai and short sword clashed. Qingming looked at the Iwagakure who was close at hand, and suddenly raised his left hand. In his shocked eyes, he completed the seal with one hand. Fire style, Phoenix Fire Technique. Qingming opened his mouth and spit out dozens of flames that looked like phoenix seeds. The distance was too close. Even though the Iwagakure Jonin realized something was wrong and retreated, he still didn't dodge completely. Two balls of fire hit his legs accurately. The scorching heat instantly made him lose his ability to move. Not only him, but the other two Iwagakure Chunins also failed to escape. They were forced into a dead corner by Qingming's control of dozens of balls of fire. Whoosh whoosh, two shurikens flew out and accurately pierced their lower abdomens. They didn't take their lives either, but they made them lose their fighting power. At this time, the footsteps of the wounded in the forest were getting closer. Qingming didn't hesitate at all. He immediately crossed his hands and performed the shadow clone technique. His figure instantly turned into 6. Qingming looked at the 4 latest shadow clones and said, "I'll leave it to you." Yes, the shadow clones nodded and rushed into the forest. With their strength, it was more than enough to deal with the wounded. 10 minutes later, the battle was over. All the captives were knocked unconscious and gathered together. Qingming looked at the rock ninjas lying on the ground, and the joy on his face could no longer be concealed. Sure enough, we came to the right place. Qingming began to count the number of people with a mutter. After counting, the joy on his face became even stronger. There were 34 captives in the field, which was the most he had ever captured in a single time. Among these 34 people, there was 1 Junin, 27 Chunin, and only 6 Jinan. According to his previous experience, if he squeezed the other party without caring about their lives, he could get about 3,000 chakra points from 1 Jinan, 6,000 to 10,000 chakra points from a Chunin, and more than 15,000 chakra points from a Junin. Although most of these people were injured and their chakras were definitely not particularly full, it was not a small number when added together. Qingming made a brief calculation and found that if he drained these 34 people, he could get about 200,000 chakra points. If all of this chakra was used to practice the reflection of the heart technique, he could gain 1,250 proficiency points. Correspondingly, the evolution of the Sharingan will also be increased by 1,250 points. There is no doubt that this is a huge improvement. However, Qingming cannot do this. There is no other reason. There is not enough time. The effect of casting the heart reflection technique will last for about 1 minute. Only after the special chakra in the brain disappears, he can cast it a second time 1,250 times, that is a full 20 hours, and he obviously can't stay here for 20 hours. As for how long he can stay, Qingming went straight to the Iwagakure ninja who had fought with him not long ago. Papa 2 slaps woke him up. Then, cast the Jinjutsu Sharingan to guide him to recall relevant information. Soon, Qingming got the answer, at most 3 hours. After 3 hours, someone will come to receive this batch of wounded, and he must leave before then. In other words, he has only 3 hours at most to practice the heart reflection technique. And this can only digest less than 30,000 points of chakra. Of course, Qingming also thought about using shadow clones to speed up. But it's useless. The reflection heart technique directly stimulates the brain to produce a special chakra, which in turn promotes the evolution of the Sharingan. Although the shadow clone is a physical clone, it cannot complete this step, so it is useless to use it. At this moment, Qingming regretted why he did not learn a sealing technique similar to the yin seal that can store chakra. However, regret is useless, and now he can only make do with it. Although the shadow clone cannot assist him in practicing the reflection heart technique, other ninjutsu can still be used, but the efficiency is a little low. Proficiency is ultimately the understanding of ninjutsu. These shadow clones do not have the blessing of the proficiency panel. Although they will encounter bottlenecks during the practice process, they can still summarize experience. As long as he summarizes these experiences in time and turns them into proficiency, and then uses the shadow clone to refresh, he can ignore the existence of bottlenecks to a certain extent. This is the solution he came up with after discovering that the shadow clone did not have a proficiency panel. However, there was no need to do this before because chakra was not abundant. Now, the situation is special, and he can just try it out. Qingming summoned 4 shadow clones and asked them to split into 2 groups to practice the illusion, Sharingan and Rasengan respectively. He himself practiced the reflection of the heart technique. As for the last shadow clone, his task was to be on guard. Although Qingming had dug out information from the head of the Iwagakure Junin, the situation on the battlefield was changing rapidly, and no one knew what would happen in the next second. What if the Iwagakure Junin responsible for picking up the wounded had already arrived? He couldn't be completely unprepared, right? Therefore, it was still necessary to be on guard. Everything was ready. Qingming no longer wasted time, and immediately performed the chakra absorption technique to extract chakra from the body of the Iwagakure in front of him. After the chakra was replenished, he quickly entered the state of practice. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Draining the Pond to Fish Out. A quarter of an hour later. The two shadow clones practicing the Rasengan were the first to fail and turned into a ball of chakra, carrying experience and memory, and returned to the main body. Qingming, who was practicing the reflection of the heart technique, frowned, and then separated a part of his mind and began to integrate these experiences and memories. After a moment, he opened his eyes, opened the panel and glanced at it, and saw that the proficiency of the Rasengan had increased by 30 points. And with the same chakra, if the main body were to practice it personally, it would gain about 45 points of proficiency. In other words, the efficiency of the shadow clone's practice is only 2/3 of that of the main body. And this is still the efficiency in a short period of time. If it continues, and the shadow clone is not refreshed, this efficiency will be further reduced until it encounters a bottleneck and the efficiency drops to 0. However, Qingming will definitely not let this happen. Glancing at the two shadow clones who were still practicing the illusion Sharingan, Qingming thought for a moment and took the initiative to cancel the shadow clone technique. Then, 2 more experiences and memories returned, and Qingming savored them carefully. After integrating all these experiences and memories, he opened the panel and took a glance. He saw that the proficiency of the Genjutsu, Sharingan on it had increased by 50 points, and the efficiency was about 2/3 of the main body. Qingming nodded with satisfaction, then came to the side of a rock ninja, performed the chakra absorption technique, absorbed the opponent's chakra, and replenished the chakra in his body. Then, he performed the shadow clone technique again, split out 4 shadow clones, and began a new round of practice. In this way, every 15 minutes or so, Qingming would refresh the status of the 4 shadow clones and replenish chakra by the way, and the cycle would repeat. Soon, the time came to an hour and a half later. After Qingming once again integrated a practice experience of the 2 shadow clones about the Rasengan, his Rasengan proficiency directly reached level 1, 197, 200. Considering the possible bottleneck, Qingming simply suspended the practice of the reflection heart technique, and the main body practiced a Rasengan 3 times. So, without any surprise, his Rasengan directly entered the level 2. As a result, Qingming's understanding of the Rasengan also rose to a higher level. At this time, when he performed this technique again, both the speed and the condensed chakra ball were much stronger than before. However, if he wanted to reach the point where he could integrate a wind chakra and then develop the S-level ninjutsu, wind-style Rasengan, there was still a long way to go. Qingming was not too anxious about this. Anyway, he had not yet fully mastered the form and nature changes of the wind attribute chakra. Even if he upgraded the level of the Rasengan now, it would be difficult to complete the step of integrating the wind-style chakra. So, let's do it step by step. Muttering, Qingming put his mood in order and performed the shadow clone technique again, splitting out 4 shadow clones and continuing the practice just now. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, more than an hour had passed. Seeing that the 3-hour deadline was about to arrive, Qingming finally completed the set goal. There were a total of 200,000 chakra points, 28,000 of which were used to practice the reflection heart technique, gaining 180 points of proficiency. 150,000 points were used on the Rasengan and Genjutsu, Sharingan, which increased their proficiency by 360 points and 600 points respectively. Another 20,000 chakra points were lost due to the frequent use of the shadow clone technique. To be honest, Qingming felt really painful when he saw these losses, but there was no other way. In order to save time, he could only do this. Qingming stood up, glanced at the bodies of the rock ninjas on the ground, then formed a seal and performed the fire-style, great fireball technique. Boom! The red flame spread and covered all the bodies in the blink of an eye. A smell of burnt flesh and blood came. Qingming frowned, covered his nose and took 2 steps back, and left the place after all the bodies were burnt. Not long after he left, A dozen rock ninjas escorted 2 medical ninjas here. Obviously, they were the Iwagakure ninjas who were responsible for receiving the wounded. However, what awaited them were only charred corpses all over the ground. Immediately, all the Iwagakure ninjas changed their expressions. Some looked around vigilantly, some contacted their superiors to report what was happening here, and some searched for traces of the enemy. In short, they were very busy. By the time they found some clues, Qingming had already found the second target. This was a team of 4 people, who were in a hurry at this time, and didn't know where to go. Qingming carefully followed them for a distance, and after confirming that there were no other people around and that the 4 were only Chunins, he acted decisively. With almost no effort, all 4 were knocked down by him. After that, Qingming directly used the Genjutsu Sharingan to guide the letting Iwagakure Chunin to recall the relevant information of this mission. Soon, he figured out the mission of these 4 people. It turned out that they were here to pass on a piece of information. As for the content of the intelligence, Qingming ripped open the man's clothes and took out a scroll from his arms, but after seeing the seal spell on it, he gave up the idea of checking it. For information like this, there must be a corresponding solution to open it, otherwise the scroll will self-destruct. And it is obvious that these 4 tools cannot know the correct solution. So Qingming will not waste his time. Glancing at the surrounding environment, Qingming performed the shadow clone technique and split a shadow clone, and then he and 2 of them, along with 4 Iwagakure Chunin, left the original place. After randomly finding a remote corner, Qingming ordered the shadow clone to be on guard, and he began the preparations before training. According to previous experience, if he squeezed them with all his strength, these 4 Iwagakure Chunin could provide him with about 30,000 points of chakra. This time, he didn't have to rush, and he could use all of this chakra to practice the reflection heart technique. In this way, he could gain more than 180 points of proficiency. In fact, if he wanted to accumulate proficiency in the most efficient way, he should find a place to practice by himself, just like he did a few days ago. Then he would let his shadow clones go out to capture prisoners, and by the way, use a slow and steady approach to harvest their chakra. Only in this way can the value of these prisoners be fully utilized. At the same time, it would not waste too much time. But in the current situation, it is too dangerous to stay in one place, so he can only give up this method temporarily. Fortunately, this time, the Hidden Rock Village mobilized more than 10,000 ninjas to encircle the third Raikage and the elite cloud ninjas led by him. And so many ninjas gathered together, even if they were well trained, they would inevitably cause some confusion. In this way, he could easily find the target to attack, and would not waste too much time. Shaking his head, Qingming put these miscellaneous thoughts behind him, calmed down, and began to seriously comprehend the whole process of the reflection of the heart technique taking effect. Chapter 144. 3 days later. 3 hours later. It was near dusk. Qingming finally digested the chakra contributed by the 4 Iwagakure Chunin. After that, he skillfully performed the sea-level ninjutsu, fire style, great fireball technique, and completed the task of destroying the corpses. Then, he went to a place closer to the battlefield without stopping to search for the next target. Qingming knew that the third Raikage could only hold on for 3 days. After 3 days, he would die of exhaustion. By then, the Iwagakure village would be free, and if he took action again, the risk would increase sharply. Therefore, he must seize the time and improve himself as much as possible in these 3 days. After that, he would have to consider leaving the land of Earth. Thinking of this in his heart, Qingming's pace could not help but speed up a bit. In a flash, time came to 3 days later. This afternoon, in a stone forest near the northwest border of the land of Earth, more than 20 Iwagakure ninjas were lying on the ground, groaning in pain from time to time. They were obviously some wounded. In front of them were Qingming and his 4 shadow clones. Logically speaking, he should be happy to have captured so many Iwagakure ninjas, but Qingming's face was not happy at all. It was because the information about him might have been leaked. Qingming cast his eyes on a Iwagakure Jonin in front of him. Even though the other party's hands were disabled and there was a twisted and hideous wound on his chest, his eyes were still not afraid at all. Seeing Qingming looking at him, the other party said viciously, "Uchiha brat, wait, someone will come to you soon. You can defeat me alone, can you defeat the entire Iwagakure village? You killed so many of us, the third generation will not let you go no easy." Qingming frowned when he heard it, looked at the shadow clone next to him, and said, Tell him to shut up. The next moment, the shadow clone flashed and came to the back of the Iwagakure Jonin, and then a hand knife fell, knocking the other party unconscious. Takagi Jonin, seeing that the Iwagakure Jonin was knocked unconscious, several Iwagakure ninjas in the crowd immediately shouted. This time, without Qingming's order, the other 3 shadow clones immediately went out and knocked out all the Iwagakure ninjas in the field in an instant. Qingming looked at the Iwagakure ninjas on the ground and felt a sense of difficulty. Just as the Iwagakure Jonin said just now, he could defeat one person, but he could not defeat the entire Iwagakure village. Well, at least not now. And what he is about to face is likely to be the pursuit and interception of many Iwagakure ninjas. All this started more than 10 minutes ago. At that time, after he found this gathering point of the wounded, he observed for a while and determined that the guarding force was only 1 special Jonin and 3 Iwagakure Chunins, so he started directly. However, when the battle was the most intense, a Jonin suddenly appeared among the wounded, and he was not a special Jonin, but a real Jonin. This directly caught Qingming off guard. If it weren't for his excellent swordsmanship and the assistance of the Sharingan, and if it weren't for his Rasengan that didn't require hand seals at the critical moment, he would have hit the opponent hard. Now, maybe the battle is not over yet. Even so, he did not stop the opponent's summoned beast, which was a pangolin, and disappeared the moment it burrowed into the soil. That is why Qingming said that his information might have been leaked. Fighting with 2 Jonin, he naturally could not maintain the transformation technique, and his true appearance had long been exposed. And the pangolin had been hiding for a long time, and must have seen all of this. Now, the opponent ran away. It can be predicted that it won't be long before his appearance will spread throughout the entire Iwagakure village. That's fine, it's just an appearance, and a transformation technique can solve it. The key is that his strength has been exposed, so the next person to greet him will definitely not be a Chunin, at least a special Jonin. In this case, he must be careful. With his current strength, it's okay to deal with 1 or 2 Jonin, but if this number exceeds 3, it will be a bit dangerous. And looking at the arrangements made by the Iwagakure village today, it is obvious that they are already trying to deal with him. However, this point needs to be verified. Thinking this way, Qingming went straight to a rock ninja guard, woke him up with a few slaps, and then began to perform the Jinjutsu Sharingan to obtain information. The reason why he didn't attack the 2 Jonin directly was because Qingming was afraid that there was a trap. Although this possibility was very small, just in case, he decided to start with this rock ninja Chunin. Unexpectedly, he got the information he wanted directly from the other party's mind. The rock ninja village did not encrypt this information at all, or did not think that this information was so important. This saved Qingming a lot of trouble. He quickly closed his eyes and read the relevant information carefully. After a while, Qingming opened his eyes and showed an expression of as expected on his face. According to the other party's memory, Qingming has confirmed his guess that the Rock Ninja Village's arrangement today is indeed aimed at him. Of course, before today, the other party did not know who he was specifically, but only knew that there was a person or a team hunting Rock Ninja, especially like to attack the wounded. So, they followed the traces he left behind and came here, then set up several traps and waited for him to take the bait. Qingming, because he had been too successful in the past 3 days, only confirmed the status of the 4 guards after discovering this gathering place for the wounded, and did not investigate the situation of the wounded carefully. In the end, he was decisively caught. Only the 3rd Raikage was not dead yet, and the Cloud Ninja army had not completely escaped the pursuit range of the Hidden Rock Village, which tied up a lot of people. Otherwise, if the Hidden Rock Village arranged more high-level ninjas, he would not be able to defeat the opponent so quickly. By then, let alone victory, it would be good if he could not be defeated here. Thinking of this, Qingming could not help but feel scared. No, we can't stay here for long. Qingming stood up suddenly, raised his hand and planned to let those shadow clones deal with the Hidden Rock ninjas on the ground, and then leave here directly. However, when he saw the Hidden Rock ninjas all over the ground, he was still reluctant. Qingming only did a little calculation on these 20 or so Hidden Rock ninjas, and knew that these people could provide him with at least 150,000 chakras. This is not a small number. After hesitating for a moment, Qingming finally decided to take a gamble and let the shadow clone practice with him to consume the chakra at the fastest speed. Of course, he made this decision not because he was reluctant to give up the chakra. Although the chakra is not a small amount, with his current chakra recovery speed, It would only take about a week to accumulate it, which is far less important than his life. The reason why he decided to stay is because he felt that the Hidden Rock Village could not mobilize enough people to threaten him in a short time. Before discovering this gathering point, he had walked roughly through the surrounding area and did not find any signs of a large number of rock ninjas gathering. In other words, if the Hidden Rock Village wanted to take action against him, it could only mobilize people from farther away. It is unknown how long it would take for people to come. Moreover, the pangolin sent the information back, and the Hidden Rock Village had to report it to the higher authorities for approval, which also took a certain amount of time. It was precisely because of these considerations that Qingming decided to stay and take a gamble. Chapter 145, Pursuit. 2 hours later. When Qingming once again released the shadow clone technique and completed a new round of training, the chakra belonging to the rock ninja was finally consumed. At this time, the surroundings were still quiet. As he expected, a mere 2 hours was not enough for the rock ninja to surround this place. Qingming breathed a sigh of relief, came to the last 2 rock ninja, formed seals with both hands, and performed the chakra absorption technique. After just a few breaths, his chakra was restored to full state, while the 2 rock ninjas on the ground completely lost their vitality due to the rapid loss of mental and physical energy. Although a lot of his own information had been leaked, Qingming still didn't want the rock ninja village to know why he wanted to attack these people. So, before leaving, he still performed the fire-style, great fireball technique as usual and burned the bodies on the ground. In this way, the rock ninja village could not find out what he had done through the bodies. Finally, after cleaning up the battlefield and erasing his own traces, Qingming quickly left this place and ran straight to the southeast. Next, he needs to cross the area of a small part of the Land of Earth, follow the southwest border, enter the Land of Rain, and finally return to the actual controlled area of Konoha. That's right, Qingming is planning to return now. Although there is no news from the third Raikage, Qingming estimates that the other party will not be able to hold on for too long. At the latest, the other party will definitely die tonight. Instead of waiting until then to act, it is better to set off now, so that you may be able to avoid some of the eyes and ears of the Hidden Rock Village. However, what Qingming didn't know was that not long after he left, a 4-member team from the Hidden Rock Village arrived here. Unlike ordinary teams, these 4 people are wearing black robes and masks. They are a team of Anbu. The 4 members of the team looked at the charred corpse on the ground. Although they didn't say anything, their temperaments were all a little cold. Rin Yin, the leading Anbu ninja, suddenly spoke. Without his order, the Anbu ninja codenamed Suzune responded, "Got it, Captain." After that, she quickly completed the seal, opened her mouth slightly, and an invisible sound wave quickly spread out from her center to the surroundings. Suzune closed her eyes, moved her ears slightly, and listened carefully to the changes in the sound wave. After a moment, she opened her eyes, shook her head at the leading Anbu ninja, and said, "Captain, the person has left." Hey! Upon hearing this, the Anbu captain turned his head and looked at another Anbu ninja. The Anbu ninja codenamed Hei didn't waste any words and immediately carefully surveyed the scene. Although Qingming cleared his own traces before leaving, he could not withstand such a meticulous survey, so he was soon discovered by the Anbu ninja, who was good at tracking. He brought several teammates to a place in the stone forest, pointed to a vague footprint on the ground, and said, "Captain, this is what the target left." Really? The leading Anbu ninja carefully observed the footprint for a while, then looked at the direction of the toes and said, "Then the other party ran towards this side." "Yes," Hei replied affirmatively. "Very good." The Anbu captain nodded and immediately shouted coldly, "Let's go." After that, he directly used the flash body technique and left. Seeing this, the other 3 immediately followed. At the same time, Qingming, who was walking in the forest, suddenly felt uneasy. He stopped and carefully sensed the surroundings. However, he found nothing. Is it an illusion? Qingming thought so in his heart. But soon, this idea was excluded from his mind. Qingming believed in his intuition that there must be danger approaching. After thinking about it, Qingming no longer followed the original road, but changed direction and took a detour to the destination. After walking for a while, the uneasy feeling really disappeared. Qingming breathed a sigh of relief. However, before he could be happy for long, only about an hour later, the feeling of uneasiness appeared again. If the last time could be called an illusion, then this time it could not be called an illusion anyway. After all, how can there be 2 identical illusions? Qingming did not hesitate at all and immediately changed direction. At the same time, he also carefully cleared the traces he left behind. Sure enough, this time the feeling of uneasiness disappeared for a longer time. But in the end, the feeling returned. At this point, Qingming was basically certain that someone was following him, and the distance was very close, otherwise he would not have such a strong sense of uneasiness. If he had not guessed, the other party should be a ninja from the hidden rock village, but the one who could make him feel uneasy must be strong. In this case, Qingming naturally could not confront the other party head-on. Knowing that the enemy was stronger, he still confronted head-on. That was not courage, but recklessness. With this thought, Qingming changed the direction of advance again. This time, he not only cleared his own traces, but also performed the shadow clone technique to split a shadow clone. Then, he and the shadow clone looked at each other and ran in different directions. The shadow clone maintained a slightly faster speed than before to attract the enemy to chase, while Qingming used the flash body technique to move forward at the fastest speed. That's right, Qingming didn't want to meet the other party at all, nor did he think of ambushing the other party. Now, he just wanted to leave the land of Earth as soon as possible and return to Konoha's actual control area. The reason why he was so anxious was very simple. The shadow clone who stayed behind with the third Raikage just sent a message that the third Raikage was killed in the battle. In other words, there will be enough manpower available in the hidden rock village next. Although most of them have to return to the front line, as long as a small part of them is allocated, it will be enough for him to drink a pot. Therefore, what he has to do now is to leave the land of Earth immediately. Before that, he must not get entangled with the rock ninja. Thinking of this in his heart, Qingming's steps became faster. Qingming was somewhat fortunate that he had mastered the flash body technique to perfection early on. Now using it is really like flying. With this, coupled with chakra far exceeding that of an average Jonin, Qingming is confident that he can shake off the pursuers behind him. Of course, this does not mean that he will ignore the pursuers behind him. As the saying goes, knowing yourself and knowing the enemy, you can fight 100 battles without danger. Even if he does not intend to tangle with the enemy behind him, and the two sides are unlikely to meet, it is still necessary to understand the enemy just in case. And the shadow clone he just split out has this task. There are enough 10,000 points of chakra in the body of that shadow clone. As long as you pay attention not to be hit and reduce the number of head-on collisions, even a Jonin may not be able to defeat him. And avoiding the enemy's attack may be difficult for other people's shadow clones, but it is very easy for him who has the Sharingan. In this way, it should not be difficult to spy on the enemy's intelligence. Chapter 146 Fight. An hour later. Somewhere in the forest. Qingming's shadow clone was moving forward quickly. Suddenly, several subtle sounds of breaking through the air were heard. The shadow clone glanced back, and then a few flashes avoided the attack of the Kunai. He stood on a tree branch, looking back vigilantly. Swish, two figures appeared in an instant. They were wearing black robes and masks. They were the captain of the Anbu and the female ninja codenamed Suzune. "Iwagakure Anbu," the shadow clone looked at the people and asked in a deep voice. Hearing this, the captain of the Anbu and Suzune did not answer, but looked at Qingming seriously. After a while, the captain of the Anbu said, "Uchiha Qingming, the new genius of the Uchiha clan, opened the three Magatama Sharingan at the age of 11. Tell me, what is your purpose? It took such a short time to figure out my true identity." The intelligence capabilities of the 5 major ninja villages are indeed not to be underestimated. Qingming's heart was a little alert. You know, although he had some reputation before, it was just average in the whole Konoha. Of course, he deliberately kept a low profile, but it is undeniable that there are too many geniuses in Konoha. His reputation is not comparable to that of Kakashi Hatake, who became famous at a young age, and even Uchiha Shisu, who has recently become famous on the frontline battlefield, is not as good as him. But even so, only a few hours after his appearance was exposed, the Hidden Rock Village still figured out his true identity. Not only that, even some basic intelligence was obtained, which shows the strong intelligence capabilities of the 5 major ninja villages. No wonder Qingming would be alert. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Qingming suddenly opened his Sharingan, and the 2 Anbu ninjas who had been prepared immediately looked away. Taking this opportunity, Qingming flipped his palm, and 6 shurikens appeared in his palm, and then he threw them out instantly, from the left and right sides, and shot towards Suzune. As the saying goes, it is better to break 1 finger than to hurt 10 fingers. So, as soon as Qingming attacked, he aimed at Suzune, who is weaker. Sensing the danger, Suzune dodged and left the spot, trying to avoid a shuriken attack in this way. However, her reaction had already been calculated by Qingming. Whoosh whoosh, 2 more shurikens flew out. Qingming used more force this time, and these 2 shurikens were fired later but arrived first, hitting 2 of the 6 shurikens in the air with incredible precision. With sparks appearing, the 2 shurikens suddenly changed direction and hit the other 4 shurikens. In the end, 8 shurikens were like flowers scattered by a fairy, shooting at Suzune from different directions. At this time, Suzune's feet had just landed on the ground, and it was too late to dodge. She had no choice but to take out her kunai to face it head-on. It must be said that the combat quality of the Anbu ninja is high. Even in such a hurry, all 8 shurikens were blocked by them. Of course, she also suffered some minor injuries. 2 shurikens were knocked away by the kunai, grazing her shoulders, leaving 2 shallow scars. Logically speaking, Qingming should have taken advantage of the victory to expand his advantage, but he did not. It was not that he did not want to, but that he could not. Because at the moment he attacked, the captain of the Anbu also attacked. Swoosh, 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 several kunai shot straight at him. Qingming's Sharingan spun rapidly, and he saw the detonating tag tied behind him at a glance. So, without any hesitation, the moment he threw the shuriken, he had already left the place. Boom boom boom, a violent explosion sounded. Several balls of flames rose up and dispelled the darkness around. As soon as Qingming landed, the captain of the Anbu and Suzune came one after the other, sandwiching him in the middle. Obviously, they knew how to deal with the Sharingan. Go! Following the command from the Anbu captain, Suzune completed the seal in an instant, opened her mouth, and made a harsh sound, which hit Qingming's brain directly, making him unstable. Taking this opportunity, the Anbu captain immediately stepped forward and stabbed the kunai in his hand directly into Qingming's heart. Fortunately, Qingming had the Sharingan, and when he used it with all his strength, the opponent's movements looked like a turtle crawling in his eyes. Qingming endured the discomfort in his brain and dodged the attack of the Anbu captain, then shot out a kunai and attacked Suzune directly. Suzune was forced to interrupt the ninjutsu, and Qingming was about to chase, but was entangled by the Anbu captain, who stepped forward for the second time. For a while, the sound of ding-dong rang continuously in the field. As a true Jonin, this Anbu captain has excellent abilities in all aspects. Even if his vision is blocked, he can still support the continuous attacks of Qingming. Suzune focused on assisting, and various sound wave ninjutsu emerged one after another, greatly interfering with Qingming's movements. Qingming wanted to fight back several times, but he had no chance. Either the opponent was too far away for his attack to reach, or the captain of the Anbu restricted his movements. In short, he felt very uncomfortable, and was led by the 2 opponents almost all the time. Of course, Qingming knew that this was because he was now a shadow clone and could not be hit too hard, so he was restricted everywhere. Otherwise, even if the 2 opponents were carefully selected by the Hidden Rock Village to deal with him, they would not be able to make him so passive. It can only be said that the fragility of the shadow clone itself limited his strength. The battle continued, and as the battle progressed, he gradually figured out the information about the 2 people. First of all, Suzune, who is probably just a special Jonin, with average physical skills, and can only show a series of sound wave ninjutsu. Before, because of lack of experience, the shadow clone was greatly affected. However, after this time, if the main body is attacked by a similar attack again, it should not be seriously affected with preparation. The second is the captain of the Anbu in front of him. The opponent is very strong. In terms of combat skills, he is above the level 5 swordsmanship. He must rely on the inside of the Sharingan to suppress the opponent. In addition, he is also good at a defensive earth escape ninjutsu. He can complete the technique at the moment of being attacked and strengthen the skin to the extent that it is difficult for swords to break through the defense. Unless Qingming fully masters the form and nature changes of Wind Attribute Chakra and can integrate Wind Escape Chakra into the short sword to enhance the attack power, it will be difficult to break his defense. Of course, if no one interferes, he can also try to use the Sharingan to temporarily affect the opponent, making him reveal a flaw, and then complete a one-shot kill. But no matter which one it is destined to be not simple. It is obvious that the strength of this Iwagakure Anbu has exceeded the level of ordinary Jonin. As for whether it has reached the elite level, Qingming does not know. First, he has not fought with ninjas of this level, and he does not know how strong they are, so it is difficult to compare. Second, He does not know whether the Iwagakure Anbu in front of him has hidden something. In theory, at the level of Jonin, ninjas will be proficient in at least 2 chakra attributes. But the Iwagakure Anbu in front of him did not perform any other types of ninjutsu except Earth Escape ninjutsu. Therefore, Qingming did not know how strong the opponent was. Chapter 147 Surveillance. Dingakune and the short sword collided, making a crisp sound. Seeing Qingming, who once again put away his sword to block, the face of the Anbu captain under his mask was extremely gloomy, and then he jumped back a few times and pulled away. Seeing this, although Suzune didn't understand the reason, she also stopped attacking and just looked at Qingming vigilantly. Qingming stood in place, looking at the Iwagakure Anbu who suddenly pulled away, and the gloomy eyes under the opponent's mask, and immediately understood what the opponent must have discovered. So, he stopped tensing and smiled and said, "What's wrong?" Continue. Hearing his words, the Anbu captain suddenly said in a calm tone, "Sure enough, you are not Uchiha Qingming, or you are just one of his shadow clones." Shadow clone? Suzune heard this and immediately looked at Qingming, with a hint of surprise in her eyes, but not unacceptable. Obviously, for this situation, both the Anbu captain and Suzune were mentally prepared. Qingming didn't think it was strange that his identity was exposed. The other party might not be able to see the difference with the naked eye, but it was not difficult to guess the answer. After all, a shadow clone is a shadow clone. Because of its limited ability to withstand injuries, it is destined to make some strange moves. For example, in order to avoid some non-fatal injuries, he frequently gave up excellent attack opportunities. Such actions are fine once or twice, and it can be considered that he does not want to get hurt, but if it happens too many times, it will inevitably arouse suspicion. Because no ninja in the ninja world would do this. Qingming estimated that the captain of the Anbu in front of him guessed his identity as a shadow clone through his strange actions. However, what surprised him was that the other party's reaction was too calm, as if he had expected it. Could it be? Qingming suddenly seemed to think of something. His eyes swept from the two people, and then looked at the surrounding jungle, muttering, "No way is the plan going to change again." Qingming was speechless. At this moment, an invisible wave came, causing his body to tremble involuntarily. Qingming looked up and saw that the female ninja who had been playing the supporting role suddenly performed a large-scale attack ninjutsu. An invisible sound wave was centered on her, like a wave, spreading out rapidly in circles. Along the way, whether it was flowers, trees, snakes, insects, rats, or ants, they would tremble involuntarily when they touched this circle of sound waves. Moreover, as the attack continued, this tremor continued to increase. Being in the attack, Qingming only felt that the various structures that made up his body were shaking rapidly, as if they would fall apart at any time. This made Qingming think of a word, resonance. If this is true, then the potential of this technique is very terrifying. However, this has nothing to do with him. The opponent used this unreasonable way to launch an attack, just to take advantage of the weakness of the shadow clone's limited ability to withstand injuries. And he did not get out of the attack range of the ninjutsu in the first place, and the outcome was doomed. So, Qingming stopped wasting chakra, raised his hands, and took the initiative to cancel the shadow clone technique. Watching Qingming turn into a ball of chakra and then disappear, Lingain finally stopped the ninjutsu, and then gasped for breath. Obviously, performing this ninjutsu was a great burden on her. After a while, Lingain came to the captain of the Anbu and said, "Captain, I'm fine, let's go." "Yes," the captain of the Anbu responded, and then he and Lingain returned to the original path and chased the other two teammates. The direction in which the two were heading was the direction in which Qingming's real body escaped. It turned out that Qingming had never escaped the pursuit of the Iwagakure Anbu from the beginning to the end, but the other party could not distinguish between the two roads and which one was his real escape route. So, the troops were divided into two groups and started the pursuit. It was for this reason that the captain of the Anbu and Lingain seemed so calm after they found that the target they were chasing was the shadow clone, on the other side. Qingming, who was running fast in the forest, suddenly stopped and quickly separated a wisp of his mind to read the memory that suddenly appeared in his mind. After a moment, his face became gloomy. What the shadow clone could think of, he could also think of. The overly calm reaction of the two people was indeed a little abnormal. Combined with the pressure they put on the shadow clone, Qingming felt that the enemy might not be just the two people. Although the strength of the Anbu captain was strong, It was not enough to pose a fatal threat to him, even with the assistance of a special Jonin who was good at sound wave ninjutsu. But his intuition warning before was real. Therefore, there was a high probability that there were more than just these two enemies. In other words, there was a high probability that there were pursuers behind him. Suddenly, Qingming stopped and looked back quickly. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and soon, a minute passed. The rear was still as calm as usual, and there was no enemy at all. Huh? Qingming took a breath of relief, retracted his gaze, and then laughed at himself. When did I become a frightened bird? Just think about it, even if there were pursuers behind him, with his speed in the past period of time, the other party might not be able to catch up. And then, as long as he continued to move at this high speed, he would not be afraid of the so-called pursuers. Qingming raised his foot and was about to hurry on his way, but at this moment, he suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky. The next moment, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his heart couldn't help but stop beating for a few seconds. Under the moonlight, an eagle was circling, its eyes staring at the earth, like a ghost, without making any sound. If Qingming didn't have the Sharingan, he might not be able to find the other party. Although this eagle is no different from other eagles, Qingming's intuition tells him that this is the means used by the pursuers behind to monitor him. If it were just pursuers, even if he couldn't get rid of the other party, he could still hang on to the other party with his speed advantage. As long as his specific whereabouts were not exposed, it would be difficult for the enemy to stop him. But with this eagle as a monitor, the situation is completely different. The other party can completely grasp his escape route in advance, so as to mobilize manpower and encircle him. This is the advantage of fighting at home. No, I have to get rid of this thing, otherwise I will fall into the pocket sooner or later. Qingming's brain was working rapidly, thinking about how to deal with the situation in front of him. Qingming tried, but with his current pupil power, he couldn't directly affect the eagle from such a long distance. As for other ninjutsu, there was even less hope. It seems that I can only deal with the person behind it. Qingming's idea was simple. Since he couldn't deal with the eagle, he would deal with the person controlling it. The result would be the same. With a light sigh, Qingming had originally thought about not getting entangled with the pursuers from the hidden rock village, but plans can never keep up with changes. In this situation, even if he wanted to avoid a battle, it would be impossible. Fortunately, part of the enemy's combat power was led to another road by the shadow clone, and it would take a while for them to catch up. In this way, as long as he moved more quickly, he should not fall into the embarrassing situation of being besieged. Chapter 148 The Final Battle. Having made a decision, Qingming no longer hesitated, and immediately returned to his previous state, running forward at a very fast speed. Without any surprise, the eagle caught up again. Qingming ignored the other party and continued to move forward until he arrived at a dense forest. After confirming that the view above his head was blocked, he stopped. Then, he crossed his hands and performed the shadow clone technique, creating a shadow clone. Qingming looked at the other party and nodded. The shadow clone nodded without saying a word, and then ran straight forward. Qingming dodged and hid on the side of the road, while restraining his whole body's breath, waiting for the pursuers behind to arrive. Time passed by minute. In a blink of an eye, more than 10 minutes passed. The expected enemy still did not appear, which made Qingming wonder if his guess was wrong. But in the end, he was patient and continued to wait. A few minutes later, accompanied by a subtle sound of footsteps, two figures appeared on the path in the forest. They were dressed in black robes and masks, and were dressed exactly like the two people that the shadow clone had met before. They were obviously also Anbu ninjas from the hidden rock village. Seeing these two people, Qingming couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. As the saying goes, it's better to be afraid of thieves than to be afraid of thieves thinking about it. Knowing that there is an enemy targeting you, but not being able to find it, that is the most torturous thing. But since the enemy has already appeared, there is nothing to be afraid of. In the end, the ninja world still relies on fists. With this thought, Qingming seized the opportunity and threw 3 kunai in an instant, attacking one of the hidden rock village Anbu. How to say it? As expected of an Anbu ninja, his reaction is fast. The moment he sensed danger, he dodged to the side. However, the kunai thrown by Qingming was not just a kunai, but also had a detonating talisman tied behind it. Boom boom boom, accompanied by 3 deafening explosions, 3 fireballs rose up and instantly dispelled the darkness around them. Qingming's Sharingan spun rapidly, instantly locking onto the positions of the two Iwagakure Anbu. Without the slightest hesitation, he flipped his palm and threw out 3 more shurikens. In line with the principle of hitting the man when he is down, this time he targeted the Iwagakure Anbu from before. The man was already dizzy from the shock wave generated by the explosion of the detonating talisman, and now he was suddenly attacked, and he couldn't react at all. In a hurry, he only managed to block 2 shurikens. As for the last one, he twisted his body to dodge, but it was too late. In the end, he could only avoid the vital parts, leaving a deep scar on his waist. Qingming was relentless, and his hands quickly completed the seals. He opened his mouth and spit out hundreds of fireballs like impatience seeds, which was the fire style, impatience fire technique. Qingming controlled these fireballs, flew forward quickly, and smashed towards the Iwagakure Anbu. Water style, water array while at the critical moment, the Iwagakure Anbu completed the seal and used this defensive water style ninjutsu, blocking all the fireballs controlled by Qingming. Seeing this, Qingming secretly said what a pity. At this time, it was too late to attack the opponent. Because another Iwagakure Anbu had locked his position and was rushing towards him. And several kunai arrived before the opponent. Qingming instantly drew out the short sword at his waist, accompanied by a series of ding-ding-ding sounds. All the kunai were cut down by him. Just as he was waiting for the Iwagakure Anbu to arrive, the opponent suddenly braked and hid behind a tree. Qingming was slightly stunned when he saw this, but he quickly reacted that everything the opponent had just done was just to attract his attention in order to relieve the pressure on his companions, and he did not really intend to fight him in close combat. Come to think of it, his Sharingan had already been opened, and as long as the opponent had not lost his mind, he would not fight him head-on alone. Moreover, the Pangolin must have passed on the information that he was good at swordsmanship. In this case, there was no reason for this person to fight him in close combat. Unless the opponent had the strength of the Anbu captain and had enough confidence, he would only avoid direct combat. Thinking of this, Qingming looked at another Iwagakure Anbu, and the opponent had indeed hidden himself. For a moment, the whole forest became quiet, except for the crackling sound of the flames burning the trees. There was no other sound. Time passed by minute, and the 2 Iwagakure Anbu never launched an attack. Qingming thought about it for a while and understood their intention. It was obvious that the 2 had no confidence in defeating him, so they planned to delay time. And as long as he was dragged here, the Iwagakure village would have 100 ways to kill him. Humph, that's a beautiful thought, Qingming snorted coldly, inserted the dagger into the ground, and then quickly completed the seal with both hands. After taking a deep breath, he suddenly exhaled. The next moment, a violent wind swept through, and a huge cyclone appeared in front of Qingming, advancing at a very fast speed, uprooting all the flowers, plants and trees along the way. Even some gravel was swept away. This scene, like a natural disaster, was the power of Qingming's wind style, great breakthrough at full strength. This almost consumed nearly 1,000 points of Qingming's chakra. But it must be said that the effect was really good. After the scene was cleared, there was no tree to block it, and the moonlight sprinkled directly, making the surroundings brighter. In the mess, 2 figures appeared, and they were the 2 Iwagakure Anbu. At this time, they stood in a triangle with Qingming to ensure that when Qingming used his Sharingan, the other person could attack him. However, this was useless. Without the protection of the complex environment around him, Qingming was not afraid even if he was fighting 1 against 2. Kill! With a low shout, Qingming drew his sword and rushed forward, and almost instantly came to Iwagakure Anbu, who as the Iwagakure ninja he deliberately targeted. As the saying goes, you should pick the weak ones. The opponent had been injured by him before, so he naturally had to take advantage of the victory and attack him. As for the other person, he could just deal with him first. Soon, the 3 of them fought in a group. Qingming could clearly feel that the strength of these 2 people was far inferior to the 2 Iwagakure Anbu that the shadow clone had encountered on the other side before. Perhaps it was because they were not good at frontal combat, but other abilities. In short, it took only a little over 10 minutes for Qingming to kill the 2. During this period, the 2 counterattacked many times, but under Qingming's level 5 swordsmanship and 3 Mogatama Sharingan, they did not cause much trouble. However, in order to resolve the battle as soon as possible, Qingming still adopted some fighting methods of exchanging injuries for injuries, so he suffered some minor injuries. Fortunately, he had healing skills, so this injury was nothing. After treating the injuries on his body a little, Qingming did not stay and left the place immediately. He even did not clean up the battlefield. Chapter 149 Return. An hour and a half later, the captain of the Anbu and the Anbu ninja code named Suzune finally arrived here. The two looked at the messy scene and the bodies of their two teammates, and they no longer had the calmness they had before. Captain, Suzune wanted to say something, but was interrupted by the captain of the Anbu, who said, "First, investigate the scene and see if we can find traces of the target." "Okay, Captain," Suzune responded, and then he and the captain of the Anbu carefully checked the scene. After a while, they gathered together again, and their faces under the masks were not very good. It's not that they didn't find the traces left by Qingming. On the contrary, they found a lot. But it was precisely because there were too many that they had no idea where to start. As Anbu ninjas, although the two were not weak in this aspect, they were nothing compared to the two teammates who were dedicated to exploration and tracking. However, they were now dead in battle, which made it impossible for them to distinguish the truth of these clues in a short time. In this way, it was bound to waste a lot of time. By the time they found out, Qingming would have probably run away. Although he didn't want to admit it, the captain of the Anbu knew that there was a high probability that Qingming would not be caught this time. However, even if there was a 1 in 10,000 chance, he was still unwilling to give up. After thinking for a while, the captain of the Anbu ordered Lingayan, send a message to the teams in front and ask them to immediately block all the roads leading to the border of the Rain country. That's right, just as Qingming expected, when his whereabouts were known, the Hidden Rock village had already dispatched a large number of people to wait for him in front. If he hadn't discovered the eagle above his head in advance, he would have run into the pocket prepared for him sooner or later. By then, he would really be unable to escape. You know, because his actions were exposed in advance, he had to evacuate in advance. Now, the evolution of his Sharingan has not reached a critical point, and it is impossible to evolve into a Mangekyo in a short time. This means that he has lost his biggest trump card. In this way, once surrounded, he has no ability to break out of the encirclement. By then, there is only one way to die waiting for him. It can only be said that his caution saved his life again. 3 days later. Land of Earth. Southern border. Qingming carefully passed through the last line of defense of the Hidden Rock village and entered the Land of Rain. After that, it took another day to pass through the control area of the Hidden Rock village and came to Konoha's own actual control area. Here, he was out of danger. Looking back on the past few days, he crossed mountains and ridges, and his life was so scary. The Hidden Rock village not only blocked all roads, but also sent people to search the mountains. In order to avoid the pursuit and interception of the Hidden Rock village, he dared not relax at all. He could not take the normal road, so he could only spend the whole time in the mountains. Trekking through mountains and rivers is not just talk. After a few days, he almost turned into a savage. Now, Qingming just wants to find a place to take a comfortable bath and then have a good sleep. Who is it? Just when Qingming was thinking about it, a slightly childish low voice suddenly came from a distance. Then, several kunai flew over, brushed his cheek, and nailed to the big tree in front. Qingming stopped, instantly opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan, and looked in the direction where the kunai came from. However, to his surprise, what he saw was also a pair of 3 Magatama Sharingan. Qingming looked at the owner of the eyes, and saw an Uchiha ninja who looked younger than him walked out. Shisu, that's right, the person who came was none other than Uchiha Shisu. Behind him, there were 3 Konoha Chunins, obviously members of his team. However, Qingming's eyes only swept over them, and then returned to Uchiha Shisu. After several months of fighting on the battlefield, the opponent has changed greatly. Although his appearance is still immature, his temperament is unusually calm. At the first contact, he gave people a sense of trustworthiness. Qingming, Uchiha Shisu looked Qingming up and down, and spoke hesitantly. It's not that he didn't recognize Qingming, but Qingming's current sloppy appearance was completely different from before, so he didn't dare to confirm it. In the past, although Qingming was not a germaphobe, he always showed a clean and tidy appearance. But now, he was almost the same as a savage. Qingming saw the surprise in the other's eyes, and replied with a wry smile, "It's me." Hearing this, Uchiha Shisu raised his hand to signal the 3 people behind him to relax, and then smiled and said, "Why did you become like this?" Qingming raised his hand and pointed to the north, saying, "The mission forced me to do it. There is no other way." Hearing the mission, Uchiha Shisu didn't ask any more questions. The two chatted for a few more words, and after verifying Qingming's identity, they let him go. Looking at Qingming's back as he left, Uchiha Qingming's eyes flashed with a strange color. Although he couldn't be 100% sure, he felt that his Sharingan was suppressed when they looked at each other just now. In other words, Qingming's pupil power might be even better than his. And how fast is his progress? Compared with other Uchiha Jonin, Uchiha Shisu is very clear. Among all the Uchiha ninjas, he is definitely a unique existence. But what about Qingming? Although he opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan after him, his pupil power has surpassed him. This made him happy, and he couldn't help but have a little comparison in his heart. At the same time, Qingming was also estimating the degree of evolution of Uchiha Shisu's Sharingan. In the end, he came to the answer. If calculated according to the panel rules, it is estimated that it is only 1 or 2,000 less than his evolution. His Qingming couldn't help but take a breath of cold air after coming to this conclusion. You know, he is practicing with cheats, while Uchiha Shisu can only rely on himself. Even so, he is only 1 or 2,000 points faster than the other party. From this, it can be seen how strong the other party's talent is. However, Qingming soon calmed down again. Whether the other party's talent is strong or not has nothing to do with him. He just needs to follow his own path, and there is no need to compete for superiority. Moreover, no matter how talented the opponent is, he will still slow down when he encounters the threshold of the main Gekyo. But he is different. If he really doesn't care, he can open the main Gekyo Sharingan in half a month at the latest. But what's the use? In addition to increasing the risk of a genetic disease outbreak, it does not improve his apparent combat power much. After all, he can't expose the main Gekyo Sharingan at this time. Therefore, what he has to do first is to improve the physique attribute and shorten the gap between it and the spiritual attribute. Only in this way can he lay a solid foundation for future progress. Chapter 150 Rest and Planning. Another day later. After passing several checkpoints, Qingming finally returned to the base camp. However, after returning, he did not rush to write a mission report, but planned to take a shower and clean up his personal hygiene first. The conditions in the camp were limited, so Qingming simply went directly to a waterfall not far from the training ground. After taking a comfortable shower there and changing into a new set of clothes, he began to write in detail about this mission experience. Because the shadow clone was online throughout the whole process, it didn't take long for him to finish writing the mission report. After submitting it, Qingming didn't care what the superiors thought of this report. He returned to his residence and fell asleep. He hadn't had a good sleep for almost 10 days. Now that he finally came back, he naturally had to have a good sleep. In a flash, time came to noon the next day. Qingming, who had slept for more than 20 hours in a row, finally woke up. The next moment, he sat up straight, his Sharingan opened involuntarily, and his eyes vigilantly swept around. After seeing the furnishings in the tent, he remembered that he had returned to the base camp. Qingming couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Bang! He fell back and closed his eyes again. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 10 minutes passed, and Qingming still didn't fall asleep. Even though he was still a little tired, he just couldn't fall asleep. Qingming simply stopped trying to sleep, propped himself up with his hands, and sat up again. Panel. With a thought, Qingming opened the proficiency panel. The next moment, the familiar light blue light screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 11 years old. Constitution, 11 spirit, 15 chakra, 21,350, 2,098,022,132, bloodline, Sharingan, 3 Magatama, 5,806, 10,000, 8,724, 10,000, skills, chakra refining technique, LV4, 1674, 2000, LV4, 1738, 2000, fire style, great fireball technique, LV4, 65, 2000, fire style, dragon fire technique, LV4, 23, 2000, wind style, great breakthrough, LV3, 419/1000, shadow clone technique, LV2, 16 out of 500, LV2, 88 out of 500, chakra absorption technique, LV5, 810/5000, LV5, 1050/5000, healing technique, LV4, 490/2000, LV4, 650/2000, Rasengan, LV1, 5/200, LV3, 650/1000, Jinjutsu, Sharingan, LV6, 13/10000, LV6, 2310/10000, Heart Reflection Technique, LV7, 692/20000, LV7, 3610/20000, Sword Technique, LV5, 1025/5000, LV5, 1120/5000, Chakra Control, LV4, 410/2000, LV4, 820/2000, 3 Body Technique, LV3, 0/0, Instantaneous Body Technique, LV4, 0/0, Ninja Tool Throwing, LV5, 0/0, Fire Style, House of Phoenix Fire Technique, LV5, 0/0, Magic, Jihangjutsu, LV5, 00. Qingming looked at the 3 Magatama Sharingan with an evolution degree of 8724/10000 on the panel, and after a quick calculation, he found that he would need about 200,000 chakra points to reach the edge of evolution. And now, his chakra recovery is 21,000 points per day. In other words, he can accumulate enough chakra in about 10 days. Qingming pondered for a while and decided to do nothing for the next period of time, and practice the reflection of the heart jutsu to raise the evolution degree of the Sharingan to more than 9,900 points. Although he escaped safely after being chased and blocked by the hidden rock village this time, the process was still somewhat dangerous. Now, Qingming urgently hopes to have a trump card that can influence the situation of the battle. In this way, if he encounters any difficult dilemma in the future, the worst that can happen is to flip the table. There is no doubt that the Mangekyo Sharingan has such ability. Therefore, he must raise the Sharingan to the edge of advancement in the shortest possible time. In this way, at the critical moment, he can completely forcefully open the Mangekyo Sharingan, thus having the power to influence the battle situation. However, in this case, the gap between his spiritual attribute and physical attribute will be further widened, and the risk of a genetic disease outbreak will be multiplied. Therefore, he must immediately start to improve the physical attribute after the Sharingan's evolution reaches the critical point. Only in this way, he will not suffer after the table is overturned. As for the method of improvement, just as he had summarized before, use the Yang escape chakra produced by high-level medical ninjutsu to warm the body and improve it naturally. This is almost the easiest way for him to achieve it at present, and it is also the method with the least side effects. Of course, at this stage, he can no longer focus only on medical ninjutsu. Like wind escape, great breakthrough, Rasengan, illusion, Sharingan, swordsmanship, etc., all need to be practiced simultaneously. But by then, he may have to go back to his old job, capture prisoners, and act as a chakra battery. When Qingming thought of this, he had a headache. After a while, he sighed and said, "Oh, it would be nice if I could have a tailed beast." However, now, he could only think about it. Before he opened the Mangekyo Sharingan, he would not risk attacking the tailed beast. Even if he opened the Mangekyo Sharingan, he would not attack without absolute certainty. You know, there are many people in the ninja world who are eyeing the tailed beasts, not to mention the 5 major ninja villages. Qingming knows their methods, so he doesn't care much. The key is Uchiha and Black Zetsu. These 2 guys are also eyeing the 9-tailed beasts. Uchiha is fine. It won't be long before his life will come to an end. Qingming won't have to worry about it then. But Black Zetsu is different. He doesn't have to worry about his life. As the product of Kaguya Otsutsuki's will, he has been running around in the ninja world for 1,000 years in order to revive his mother. This time is almost the most hopeful time. So this time, he will definitely not let others take the tailed beast for themselves. If Qingming wants to attack the tailed beast, he will definitely fight against the other party. Considering his near-perfect concealment ability and all-pervasive detection ability, Qingming felt that he had to master a strong enough detection method before he took action. Otherwise, he might be robbed by someone right after he kidnapped the tailed beast. Qingming didn't want to make wedding clothes for others, so he had to be fully prepared. In addition, Nagato, when he was in charge of the Akatsuki organization, the ultimate task was to capture the tailed beast, so this could not be ignored. The more Qingming thought about it, the more he felt that his preparation was still not enough. If possible, He hoped to learn the Flying Thunder God technique. In this way, whether it was to hurry on the road or to save his life, it would be much stronger. Flying Thunder God technique, Qingming murmured, and began to think about how to obtain this technique. Don't think that anyone can learn this technique just because Shirin Yu Zhenjian, Dai Iwashi, and Bingzu Litong, 3 ordinary Konoha ninjas, can learn this technique. In fact, the reason why these 3 people can learn it is because they are the guards of the 4th Hokage, Namikaze Minato, and it is normal for Namikaze Minato to give them special treatment. In fact, as an S-level forbidden technique recorded in the Book of Seals, the Flying Thunder God technique is not accessible to everyone. As long as Konoha is still headed by Sarutobi Hiruzen, Qingming estimates that even if he has enough merits, the other party will not allow him to learn this technique. After all, Sarutobi Hiruzen is also very afraid of the Uchiha clan, otherwise he would not have acquiesced to Shimura Danzo to do so many things. In this case, how could the other party allow him to learn such a ninjutsu with full mobility? Are they really not afraid of being assassinated by him? Sarutobi Hiruzen. Shimura Danzo. When Qingming thought of these 2 roadblocks, he wanted to kill them immediately. However, Qingming calmed down in the end. Not to mention that his current strength is not the opponent of these 2 people. Even if he is, he can't do such a thing before the war is over. At this stage, he still needs a place to live. In addition, Qingming doesn't want Konoha to be the loser of this ninja world war. That would not be a good thing for him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.